June 9th, 2026, Village of Winnetka, Village Council Special Meeting. We'll call this meeting to order, and everyone mute their cell phones if you would. Appreciate that. And we'll call the meeting to order, Kristen.
Trustee Handler.
Here.
Trustee Albinson.
Here.
Trustee Orsic.
Here.
Trustee Apatoff.
Here.
Trustee Myers.
Here.
President Dearborn.
Here. Okay, and just a quick note here. It's with sadness that we announce the passing of Pete Henderson. Many people in the room probably knew Pete. Pete died on May 30th. He was a 70-year Winnetka resident. He was a Winnetka Man of the Year, president of the Winnetka School Board, board member of the Community House, son of the village president, former village president Kenneth M. Henderson Sr., and the spouse of Winnetka's Woman of the Year, Jean Henderson. And on behalf of the council, we extend our deepest sympathy to the Henderson family. Pete lived on Maple Street when I was where I live now, and so he was kind of a neighbor. He was the kind of guy you'd run into on the street, and just one of the greatest gentlemen in this town ever produced. So it's with real fondness that I think about Pete Henderson. I'm sorry for his passing. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance now. And Trustee Orsic, would you mind leading us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bridget. And we will now move on to public comment and ask if anyone in the audience would like to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda. So if you're here for a street end, this is not the time for public comment. Is there anyone that would like to make a public comment? Mr. Winnichenko.
Hi, Ted Winnichenko. I just wanted to say, I wanted to apologize. A few meetings ago, I made some comments that directly contradicted comments that were made by a previous speaker, a former Park District board member in the audience tonight. And my comments were factually incorrect. And so while I still kind of generally have my own ideas and stuff, but I just wanted to apologize because I was incorrect. So I think that's important to do. I wish the village would consider stuff.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay. Anyone else would like to make a public comment on an item not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to ordinance and resolutions. Item 4, resolution number R50, 2026, approving a settlement and tolling agreement with AT&T regarding the undergrounding of aerial communications facilities. And this is being considered for adoption. And so tonight, council will consider approving an agreement with AT&T regarding removal of electric facilities. Our village attorney, Peter Friedman, will review the topic.
Thank you. The village and AT&T had an long-standing ongoing dispute regarding a village code provision and a provision in our franchise agreement with AT&T that village's position very strongly was that AT&T was required to remove its overhead facilities once the village and others were off of those poles. AT&T disagreed. The village council authorized that we file a complaint in Cook County Circuit Court. We did that. That led to settlement negotiations with AT&T, which has culminated in the settlement agreement that's before you tonight. So the agreement resolves without AT&T or the village admitting any liability to dispute over the undergrounding of overhead communications facilities. The key points, I think, are that AT&T has agreed to underground or otherwise eliminate its overhead facilities on Tower Road between Forest Drive and Green Bay Road. They've received a permit for that already. The Tower Road project includes eliminating about 36 poles, installing about approximately 19,000 feet of new underground conduit, and adding approximately 70 underground handhold enclosures. So that's a major acknowledgement and commitment from AT&T, which they had previously refused to undertake. They will also, the anticipation is that the Tower Road project will be complete. The goal is December 1, 2026, or as soon thereafter as reasonably practical. They do have some regulatory approvals to get to make sure that they can meet that deadline. They also agreed to remove additional overhead facilities located on village public rights-of-way where the village has already removed its electric facilities, and those locations are listed in the agreement under Exhibit B. They've committed to removing all of those facilities within 7 years, and they've committed that 25% of those facilities will be removed within 4 years of the date of the agreement. Again, the exception there is if there's some regulatory approval that they're not able to get in a timely fashion. For future locations, where the village later removes, we're not off everywhere because that's part of a long-term capital program. But once we're off certain electric facilities, AT&T has agreed to remove their overhead facilities within 6 years after we give them notice. So it'll be an ongoing program. The parties agreed that, to resolve this, to stay the litigation, and most importantly, so long as AT&T is complying with the agreement, our ability and any rights we have to enforce the franchise agreement is the tolling agreement continues in place. So we're not 10 years down the road, if there's an issue, we won't face any statute of limitations problems. We'll still have all the rights we have today then if there is ever a compliance issue. And the court will retain jurisdiction to enforce the agreement. So if there is an issue, we can go right back to the same court. We don't have to file a new complaint. So we recommend approval. We think it's a good agreement.
Okay, thank you for that, Peter, and thanks for the tenacious work on your behalf, on our behalf, from you and your firm.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that. Questions for Peter from the council?
I had a quick question, one is this is really a heck of a win for the village from many standpoints. This thing was, when this first came up, and staff and continued to push and pursue it with us, it was cold as ice, and they were going nowhere. They basically gave us a flat no. So the perseverance and the ability to finally say we're gonna now take action, I thought was tremendous on the council's part. It was tremendous work by the staff and our council to push this and not get into expensive litigation, but at least hold our ground to a point where we could get this resolved. So it's a heck of a win for the village, and hopefully they will continue to do what they said they're going to do.
I think that's right. Thank you, Rob. And by the way, Nick Nari's here, head of electric. Is there any questions for Nick on this issue as well? So any other questions or thoughts, comments on this from the council? If not, why don't we open up to public comment? Anyone have any thoughts on this issue, the AT&T agreement? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back here. For final comments for Peter, questions?
When does it start again? One more time.
As soon as Bob signs it after you approve it.
Okay.
May I have a motion to adopt resolution number R50, 2026?
So moved. Second.
And Kristen, that's a roll call vote.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Apatoff?
Yes.
Trustee Orsick?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Peter, thank you again. Appreciate
Thank you
that.
all very much.
Item 4B, ordinance number M11, 2026, denying a special use permit and certificate of appropriateness for new fencing at Centennial Beach for off-leash dogs. And this is related to Centennial Park and Beach, 225 Sheridan Road, and this is being considered for introduction and possible adoption. At the May 19th council meeting, the village attorney and village staff were directed to prepare an ordinance denying a special use permit and certificate of appropriateness for fencing at Centennial Beach for off-leash dogs. And our Community Development Director, Scott Mangum, is here to review. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you. Good evening. As you stated, we did receive direction from the Village Council at the last meeting on May 19th to prepare an ordinance for denial. This followed recommendations by the Plan Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, and Design Review Board on the plans presented, original plan and new plan for the fencing. And then again, ultimately by a 5-1 vote, the Village Council did direct preparation of the ordinance. So before you this evening is ordinance M11, 2026. So this evening, after hearing from the applicant or the public, if there are questions or any discussion about that, given directions already been provided, The council may wish to consider waiving introduction and consider adoption of the ordinance, or consider only introduction of the ordinance.
Questions for Scott before we go to public comment on this issue? No questions for Scott? Okay. All right. We'll go right to public comment. If there's anyone in the public that would like to speak on this agenda item, maybe raise your hand and we'll bring you up individually. Come on up.
Warren James, urging the village to recognize that the dog beach has been a part of this community for over 30 years. It was introduced by former Park Board Commissioner Joe Dooley, also co-chair of the Lakefront Master Plan with me. It was approved 10 years ago. When we introduced the plan, it called for removing the dog beach from Centennial. And there was a large hue and outcry, and a very organized movement to keep the dog beach, to maintain it. And ultimately, the Park District changed course, reinstated the dog beach by a unanimous motion to reduce its size from over 400 feet to less than 270, and to bring it in compliance, and to bring the rest of the beach to public access. You heard from the county commissioner. The Cook County Animal Control Ordinance requires a fence. They have very specific regulations. So I would urge you, let's not disenfranchise this group of residents that loves their dogs and loves the camaraderie, the ability to use the beach, and find a solution. But whatever solution you find, you have to have a special use permit, and you're going to have a fence. Thanks.
Okay. Other public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Any questions, thoughts on this? Okay.
Why don't I make my comments now?
Okay.
Trustee Myers, did you get your vote?
So I was going to make some comments maybe after introduction, but now is maybe an appropriate time. In the May meeting, I was the sole vote, and obviously I was the sole vote through zoning and planning and design review on this topic. And since that meeting, there, a number of people in the village have, taken the liberties to maybe characterize my opinions in ways that I did not intend them to be, some in this room. So I want to be very clear what I was saying in May. And my point in voting against this, and I will vote against this resolution again tonight. But my point on the fence is that we, I think as a council, did not focus enough on the issue of the general welfare of the community, right? I think, I'm not sure that we provided and we applied our creativity and our problem-solving skills enough to really say, how can we provide a best solution for the most residents? And I don't focus on dog owners here. I really want to focus on residents, because everyone's been focusing on the dog owners and, dogs and fences and things like that. I think that what we have to recognize and put more value on is that for the past 20-plus years, one of the best beaches in Winnetka has not really been open to residents, right? It's just basically been 350 or so dog owners. And I don't mean to underplay that number of dog owners. And I think that they do have a right, the Park District has a right to put that program up. But I think we also have an obligation to try and figure out what's the best way to get more residents to use Centennial Beach. And I think a lot of us, rightly so, gave a lot of respect to the lower commissions, right? But I think we also have to look at what the lower commissions did. They did a very productive service. Planning rejected a fenced-in beach that spanned all of Centennial Park, right? and would make people have to walk through a dog beach to continue to traverse the park. And as a result, we shrunk, the park was shrunk. Zoning was concerned about fencing in the water. Fencing came out of the water, and the park district, I guess, utilized in their plan, fencing and a pre-existing groin. So if people have safety concerns about dogs in the water, they're already dealing with this groin. So there's no really additional safety issues. Now, I don't like a metal fence on the beach, but the way I, here again, want to look at this, and I think we should be looking at this, is how do we get a use of Centennial Beach for the greatest number of residents that improves the general welfare? And let's look for a longer-term solution. If a metal fence isn't the right solution, if Centennial is not the right place, fine, let's look to move it. But right now, this year, Centennial is going to stay closed to the general residents, right? Either that or we have to eliminate a dog beach, and that's unfair to the existing dog folks. Could another solution be found, right, hopefully? Will it be found this summer? I find that highly unlikely that we can move that quickly. And as a result, I think that we are either harming the general welfare of the most residents who cannot use Centennial Beach, or when Elder opens, we either have to force the dog owners to keep their dogs on a leash, which no one's going to go to a dog beach and have to go swimming in the water with their dog on a leash, which in a sense then ends the dog beach. So, I think I had proposed some options, some additional solutions. I think that we could be more creative to come up with something that says, okay, it's time of day, or it's, but instead I think we just simply said, no, we're going to eliminate, we don't have another solution. And I think as a result, we've adversely impacted the general welfare of the vast majority of our residents. So, from my point of view, this is a general welfare question that we didn't take advantage of trying to find a solution.
I would like to add a comment.
Trustee
As
Orsic.
one of the lakefront liaisons who's worked on this for quite some time, but not nearly as many years as the other lakefront liaison, indeed, no creative solutions were overlooked. And we've shared some of them, and people have come up with some ideas for other solutions like time periods or Tower Beach or whatever that are being looked into. So I will say that you're free to your opinions, but creativity was indeed utilized over the years. And as far as the lower boards, it was not that simple. What they decided on, zoning did not think the fencing was the only safety issue. One of their biggest concerns was dogs and people using the narrow staircase coming and going, and people ending up eye level with the dogs. There were multiple concerns. The fence was one of them. That said, I believe that all of the lower boards looked at these issues and did a very good job, and I will be voting the same way that I did previously. And this board is open to other creative solutions. Everyone wants the dogs in Winnetka to be happy.
Happy dogs, happy community.
I
Trustee
will
Apatow.
have to
Respectfully, I think is the word you're looking
vehemently disagree with my friend and colleague, Scott. We are doing this for the greater good of the village. If you're looking for the greater good of the village, you're talking about over 12,000 residents, you're talking about the best beach in Winnetka, we've talked about it. To Trustee Orsic's point, we have done an exhaustive search on giving, as we talked last week, the beach owners another place to actually run an off-leash dog beach, where we're not going to be in threat of running afoul of other neighbors and other problems that are now upon us and what this current situation has now provided. The lower boards did a phenomenal job. I've been deeper in this than anybody here. I have listened to all the residents at all the meetings throughout the last 4+ years, going back to President Rintz. where we, again, try to find a good common ground solution with the Park District. We took the Park District down to the beach. We did a review of the Tower Road solution. So I heard that that was not the case. We absolutely did that. And we have solutions that are existing right now that we'd like to discuss with the, to go hand in hand. Right now, I would like to say, we'd like to go hand in hand with the Park District to open up that solution at Tower. And there's no reason why we can't do that. So we think it's a really good solution. I will not be changing my vote. I will respect the lower boards and all the work they've done in the community from everything we've heard from the community over the last 4 years.
Okay?
I do have a rebuttal, but
Okay, Trustee Handler?
Well, I guess I would echo what these two fellow trustees say. In my comments last time, I think I said that the plan from the get-go was fundamentally flawed, and I think that's exhibited by the fact that every lower board, you mentioned a few items, but there were many in case, that almost every angle that was looked at with this plan had issues. I, again, want to look out for all of the community. I'm a dog owner myself. I would like to see a dog beach, but not at the expense of one of the most beautiful beaches that we have in Winnetka. I am going to be voting the same way I did last time.
Okay, Trustee Albinson? Any?
I'm going to vote the same way I did last time. A lot of my comments last time were centered around the respect and the time and the effort that the lower boards and commissions had paid to this. Appreciate, Scott, your comments as well. It means a lot. Personally, right, it's a little bit of a tightrope that we've got to balance because the Park District is a partner, separate taxing body, and we want to respect their intent and their wishes. But the feedback that I have is from our lower boards and commissions with whatever they're tasked with, whether it's zoning, whether it's design, and I want to respect that and uphold that.
Okay. Scott, one point I would make here is that what's included in this ordinance is a plan that was presented to us. So what you talked about.
That's right.
And with stipulations.
That's right.
So I just
That's
want to
right.
make it clear that what you're voting against is not the plan
I
that you
understand. That's right.
advocated.
That's right.
Okay.
And yeah, and the final point I make is, I think, to the point that you made, Bridget, which is, you and Rob worked for a long time with the parks to try and find a solution, an alternate solution. And I think the fact that one wasn't developed for whatever reason indicates that it's not, I have my skepticism that we're going to be able to find a quick alternate solution to Centennial Beach, which means, here again, Centennial remains, if we're going to leave it as a dog beach, remains closed to the vast majority of residents. So, I just think that we are, I had suggested a short period of time, where we look for alternate solutions. That wasn't carried forward, but, I just want people to recognize, I don't really care about, other residents in, adjacent to the dog beach. The question here is, how do we get more people to use Centennial Beach?
Sure.
Right, and how do we do it quickly without adversely impacting dog owners? So,
Okay,
I'm
well,
hopeful we can find
working on
a,
a creative solution.
yeah, I'm hoping we can find a
well,
very speedy.
been doing
And a
it for
very-
a lot of
Let's-
years, so
Let's address
hope-
this
yeah.
issue. Okay, so I think we know where everyone
Yep.
Yeah.
stands on this. Is there an appetite here to waive introduction?
Yes. So moved.
I will go with that.
Do I have a motion to waive introduction of ordinance M11, 2026?
So moved.
Second.
And that's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number M11, 2026?
So moved.
Second.
And Kristen, that's a roll call vote.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Myers?
No,
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Okay, that ordinance passes. Thank you very much. We move on to item 5, and this is the study session discussion tonight regarding street ends policies. Tonight, the council will review and discuss the intended functions, access, and long-term management of said lakefront street ends, and these include Fisher Lane down at the ravines, Spruce Street, Elm Street, Oak Street, Cherry Street, Willow Road, and Tower Road, and the Tower Road right-of-way. Tonight, Deputy Village Manager Hannah Lippman, will review the issue, and as part of the review and discussion, we'll be seeking preliminary council direction regarding several policy considerations. Hannah, do you want me to list those policy considerations?
Yes, please, that'd be great.
Okay. This would be the level of public access and intended use for each street end, capital improvements to support this intended use, signage and public information that might be appropriate, and then clarifying public and private boundaries. And I think what we're going to do tonight is Hannah's going to give a holistic presentation, and then we're going to double back and talk about each street end. And at the time we talk about each street end, if there are people here that want to make public comment on that specific, if you're here for Spruce Street, for instance, after we talk about Spruce, you come up and talk to us about Spruce Street. And then we'll, at the end of the meeting, hopefully arrive at some direction for legal counsel, village staff, and helpful in terms of budgeting come October on some of these issues. So Hannah, take it away.
Thank you for that introduction. Good evening, council. So as mentioned, we will be going through the village-owned street ends. In terms of agenda, we'll start with simply what are street ends. We'll go through a quick historical review of the street ends for a bit of context. Talk about the purpose, the why we're reviewing them. We'll review the considerations for discussion, and that will lay the foundation for the review of the current conditions of each street end. And then we'll end with discussion. So with that, what are street ends? To put it simply, they are where the village-owned streets meet Lake Michigan. The village owns and maintains 7 public street ends that extend to Lake Michigan, including the Fisher Lane Extension, which is the public right-of-way east of Sheridan Road at the bottom of the ravines, Tower Road, Spruce Street, Elm Street, Oak Street, Cherry Street, and Willow Road. The street ends at Lake Michigan are platted right-of-ways that have existed for many years, and they all have varying levels of functionality to serve as public access to Lake Michigan. All of the street ends except for Oak have stormwater outlets discharging into the lake, and some also serve as road or driveway access points to existing single-family residences. I know this is a hard graphic to view on a PowerPoint slide. It's really just to give you a visual of how they're spaced out along the lakefront. So the historical review of village-owned street ends last took place in 2000-2001. At that time, council had received public inquiries regarding repairs to utility structures, use, and access. Council had considered things like what level of public use or access should be intended or permitted at each site, how should access be controlled to support the village's policy objectives for facility use, and what level of repairs are necessary for stormwater pipes. So this slide is just a summary of the street ends as they were in 2000, 2001, and you can note that Tower Road wasn't part of the review back then. Upon review in May of 2001, these are the items that council gave direction on. You can see a good portion of the direction had to do with capital improvements, repairs, replacements, things of the like. And then upon further review of these decisions, some of the planned capital improvements determined at that May 2001 council meeting were changed or deferred. So for example, at the Spruce Street end, the pier was removed and council decided not to reinstall the pier. So why are we here? First and foremost, the street ends haven't been reviewed comprehensively in nearly 25 years. There's been some minor review, for example, when council considered the reinstallation of stairs at Spruce this past year, but they haven't been comprehensively reviewed in over 2 decades. Protection of open space is also reflected in the 2025 Winnetka Caucus Council proposed platforms where it appears as plank number 2. Community input gathered during that process indicated strong resident interests in preserving and protecting open spaces throughout the village, including areas along the lakefront. During a June 2025 study session, the Village Council discussed potential policy topics for future agenda consideration to help guide staff priorities, one of those being further review of open space. In addition, since the village's street ends were last comprehensively reviewed nearly 25 years ago, the village has adopted the Winnetka Futures 2040 Comprehensive Plan,
that also identifies the lakefront as one of Winnebago's most significant community assets. Within Pillar 6, Healthy and Engaging Lifestyles, the plan calls for preserving and enhancing lakefront beaches and parks, strengthening resilience measures, and protecting against bluff and shoreline erosion. So given the passage of time since the last council review and the policy direction reflected in the comprehensive plan and community priorities, the village's lakefront street ends present an opportunity for council to revisit their intended function, access, and long-term management. Staff is seeking preliminary direction from council on several policy considerations that could inform future planning, capital investment, and operational practices related to the street ends. So considerations to keep in mind before we get into the current conditions review. As we review each of the street ends, these are the four main things that we're going to be looking to discuss. So 1, level of public access and intended use, capital improvements to support that intended use, signage and public information, and clarifying public and private boundaries. So I'll quickly run through each of these and what some of this looks like, and then we'll move on to the current conditions review. So level of public access and intended use. What does this look like? It could look like, for example, if a street end is currently a utility maintenance only access point, should we consider changing it to a passive recreational use and transform it into something like an overlook that neighboring communities have?
Could you say that last part? I didn't hear what you said.
Sure. So the example, again, just as an example, but if something is currently a utility maintenance only access point, so not open for passive recreational use, not open to the public, should we consider changing it to a passive recreational use and transform it into an overlook like some neighboring communities have? For capital improvements to support the intended use, again, based on what that intended use is, are there any capital improvements or infrastructure improvements that need to be done? So is this reconstruction or installation of stairways or pathways to improve safe access, other safety improvements, including railings, surface improvements where warranted? And I think one thing that's important to note here is the stormwater infrastructure upgrades that may be recommended through the ongoing East Side stormwater study, and may present an opportunity to maximize work and simultaneously complete improvements if desired. Signage and public information. Improved signage may help clarify the intended use and operating conditions at each street end. Council may wish to consider whether updated standardized signage would be implemented to clearly communicate whether each location is intended for public access, limited access, or utility purposes, hours of operation where applicable, safety considerations related to bluff conditions, lake levels, and infrastructure, and restrictions on parking. And last, clarifying public and private boundaries. So at several locations, the transition between village right-of-way and adjacent property can be difficult for visitors to distinguish. This is an area where we do receive a good amount of complaints. Council may wish to consider whether additional measures should be evaluated to better delineate public and private areas, and that could look like improved indicators on property boundaries, landscape treatments or design elements that visually distinguish public space from adjacent private property, and consistent informational signage clarifying the limits of public access. So with that, we will go ahead, we'll go through each of the street ends, and I'll talk about current conditions before we come back to then discuss each individually. So I will start with Fisher Lane or the Ravines, which is the farthest north. Fisher Lane is accessible to the public for passive beach use activities. There's no swimming permitted, no public parking, and in 2015, there was an extensive IDOT project in the Ravines to improve stormwater conveyance and stabilize the west side of Sheridan Road near Fisher Lane, improve and reconstruct the stormwater system that outfalls to the lake, repair the sanitary lift pump station, clear vegetation, and install a concrete pavement pathway to the outfall, and also install security fencing at the outfall structure. One thing to note, IDOT owns Sheridan Road, and they would not allow additional parking to be constructed at the bottom of the ravines except for enough spaces for municipal maintenance. So you could see the aerial view here of the street end that we're talking about.
Whose rubble mound is that? Is that the homeowners?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Rubble mound that cuts across the beach?
That's the homeowner.
The break
Correct.
lines or
I
the guys north.
So that's the homeowners. Do we know if there are steps to traverse?
I was down there.
Or not? Okay,
Okay, well,
thank you.
we'll come back to
I
it.
just want, well, are we going one by one? I
Yeah,
just
do you
wanna
want
make
to,
sure.
do you
No,
want to
we're
ask
gonna-
questions or
We're
just
going to
come
come back.
Okay.
Hannah's going to go through current conditions.
Oh,
And we'll
okay.
come back.
Great.
One.
Sorry.
It's okay. So some additional photos. This first image, you can see kind of the pathway that was referenced that takes you towards the lake. You have village signage in this picture here on the left. The street end itself. You can see some additional signage about no dogs allowed on the beach. That's again village signage. Same thing, first image, village signage that is posted regarding the times. And the last picture is signage that is installed by the private property. And then this is a view of the street end from the lake. Okay, we'll move on to Tower Road. Tower Road, it consists of both Village and Park District access. Tower Road Beach is owned and operated by the Park District, while the pier itself is village property. With the village's water and electric plant located at this location, there's also additional land owned by the village, including a portion of the beach, which is leased to the Park District. Construction of the pier, just by means of quick history, into the lake began in 1893 to feed and protect the water treatment plant. There were multiple additions over the years, around the 1950s, that led to the pier and cooling ponds as they exist today. In 2020, the end of the pier was closed due to partial collapse of the asphalt decking. The pier was closed to the public in early 2026 due to structural safety concerns, and in March of 2026, Village Council reviewed recommendations from Baird and staff as to whether the pier could be rehabilitated in the short term to restore public access while long-term planning begins. The Tower Road right-of-way access to the coal chute was closed to the public following 9/11, given its proximity to the water and electric plant. What currently exists is a small walkway that ends in front of the cooling ponds. Public access could create a public safety concern due to the exposure to such a significant utility asset. The beach area south of the pier does have a complicated ownership and access status. There are 7 residential lots, and I'll point to them with my green mouse, that we refer to as the finger lots. When those lots were created by subdivision, the 7 finger lots were also created, with each residential lot being given an additional finger lot for access to the beach. The finger lots have lot lines that each narrow as they extend eastward to the water. At the time the finger lots were created, they extended on the plat to the then existing water's edge. However, the water's edge is now eastward of where the finger lots end on the plat, and so there is some ambiguity under Illinois law on the nature and extent of the finger lot owner's rights with regard to the beach access, particularly given the angle nature of the lot lines for the finger lots. So just quick map of what you're looking at. The yellow or orange box is the Park District property. The triangle, if you will, in blue is the village-owned area of the beach, in addition to our plant. We know where the pier is. And this is the street end that we are looking at. And again, this was, in case anyone had referenced ever, the coal chute. That's just to clarify that we're not looking at that. We're looking at this area over here. So just some images of the Tower Road street end. The first image is if you're looking just slightly north, basically in front of the cooling ponds. And then each of these just kind of angle a little bit southward. A little bit of signage that exists here, this just to show how close it is to the electric plant. This no trespassing sign is on our building And just to the left is where you would then run into this sign that says private property, no trespassing. And then this is the view from the lake. All right, we'll move on to Spruce Street. Spruce Street, viewing the lake from open space at the top of the bluff is permitted, although it'll be passive beach use accessible to the public upon reinstallation of the stairs in fiscal year '27. No swimming permitted, no parking permitted. The pier that covered the stormwater outlet and the pipe were removed sometime in the early 2000s. The stormwater outfall is now located near the toe of the bluff. Wooden stairs were constructed to allow staff a safe way down to the outfall to perform maintenance and to allow public to access the street end at the lakeshore. Prior to COVID-19, the stairs fell into disrepair and were chained off for public safety reasons. During the pandemic, there was a significant increase of pedestrians accessing the lake, ignoring the chained off restriction at this location. Many of these pedestrians were coming not just from within Winnetka, but also from outside of Winnetka at that time. Lake levels at that time were also at an all-time high, and there was further deterioration and damage to the wooden stairs. Given the liability exposure, the stairs had to be removed as pedestrians were ignoring that the stairs were closed. Staff initiated a review of reinstalling the stairs at the Spruce Street access, and in the proposed fiscal year '26 budget, there were funds for the full design of the stairs. And recently, council approved the preferred design and anticipates installation of the stairs in fiscal year '27. So on the left, you can see village posted signs and the area leading down to the lake. I did want to quickly show the preliminary concept plan of the stairs that will be reinstalled. Some questions had come up regarding accessibility. We've worked with legal. They have reviewed and confirmed that since there's no benches, no scenic overlooks, or any other features that would make the stairs at the top of the slope have a primary function other than being an access point to the stairs that take you to the beach, there's no requirement to provide ADA access at the top of the stairs. And then this is the view of Spruce Street from the lake. All right, Elm. The Elm Street end is not currently accessible to the public. It's a maintenance and repair access only. During 1999, the village received a request from the homeowners who reside adjacent to the portion of the Elm Street end east of Hoyt Lane to sell the closed portion of the street to them, and the village would retain a permanent easement. The residents' request was based on incidents of drug use and other inappropriate behavior, and they considered the street end an attractive nuisance. The village council ultimately rejected this and other previous requests to vacate this street end, particularly for potential future stormwater discharge. However, the council did decide to keep the street end closed. The rationale not to open this appears to be based primarily upon maintaining public safety and limited access in this area. That's Elm. Moving on to pictures. So here you could see the walkway that exists on Elm leading towards the lake and the fence that has village signage. This is kind of if you were to look on the other side of the fence. And then this picture on the right is if you're looking north, kind of over the fence. And then this is the view from the lake. Moving on to Oak, similar to Elm, the Oak Street end is not currently accessible to the public. It also does not have a stormwater outfall. Consideration for a future potential outfall could be a consideration for Elm, another reason why the village understandably wouldn't have vacated to this point and would want to consider maintaining this as a street end. You can see in these pictures that while the village doesn't have any You know, it's not an overlook, there's no stairs or anything like that, that some of the private property has extended
Can you
out.
speak a little closer to the mic? I'm sorry.
Sure, thank you. Some of the private property, especially in these pictures, you can see has extended out into what would be considered the village's street end. So these are just images as you get closer to the lake. And then this is the view from the lake. Okay, Cherry Street, it's accessible to the public for passive beach use activities via a locked gate. It is closed during the shoulder months, no swimming permitted, and no public parking. This location consists of a public pedestrian easement and utility right-of-way running east from Sheridan to Cherry Street. There is a village storm sewer located within the right-of-way that outfalls to the lake. There's a wooden stairway leading to the beach area at the east end of the right-of-way. The wooden stairs have been maintained over the years to ensure public access. The entrance to Cherry Street Lake access is via a fence-style gate east of Sheridan Road. The police department is responsible for locking and unlocking the gate in accordance with hours of operation, which tend to be April through May, 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m., late May through the end of September, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., and then again, historically, no access in the shoulder months. Over the years, requests have been made by adjoining property owners for the village to vacate the extension due to disruptions and vandalism occurring by people visiting the lakefront. More recently, neighbors again made a request to vacate the Cherry Street extension during 2021 due to ongoing disruptions. The neighbors were informed by village staff that it would be very unlikely that village council would entertain this request. However, due to the repeated complaints of disruptions and vandalism, the village partnered with the Park District, where they provided staffing attendance services to perform observation and report to the police if any unruly behavior was being observed. The arrangement lasted for approximately 2 years, and then the village hired a private contractor to perform these services in fiscal year 25, although these were then eliminated in the fiscal year 26 budget. So on the left, again, this is the walkway that would lead you towards the lake. The village signage that is posted on the gate, the access gate for Cherry. You start to see the wooden stairs that will take you down to the lake. Cherry Street does have a lot of signage, so again, these are images here of more village signage that is posted. The first two images, so no swimming or diving, no dogs permitted on the beach, no diving, these are village signs. The sign on the right, or the picture on the right, excuse me, does show both a private property owner sign, this one here on the left, and a village sign here on the right. And then here's the view from the lake. All right, last one, Willow. Willow, currently no public access. It's a maintenance and repair access only. During 2020, the private property south of Willow Road, the stormwater outfall needed a shoreline restoration and armoring due to the high lake level damage and erosion. This also affected the outfall at Willow Road. The damage to our street end and outfall was extensive, and in June 2021, the Village Council approved the Willow Road outfall improvements at a cost in excess of $250,000. The project included shoreline protection, replacing the storm sewer outfall, removing deteriorated stairs, replacing the existing fencing for public safety, replacement of a sidewalk and road end, and landscaping upgrades. Willow Road does have the village stormwater outfall, and there's also a stormwater outfall owned by the Union Pacific Railroad that drains the depressed track areas that traverse the village. This is an inherently unsafe location as there's no sand in the area, and the water typically abuts the stormwater outfalls. So here are some images. Again, this first one, if you're walking towards the lake and you see the village fencing that's installed. This is the Union Pacific outfall. And then the view from the lake. A couple other quick points separate from the street ends themselves, stormwater. The village does have a total of 7 primary stormwater outfalls to Lake Michigan at the following locations. 5 of the 7 have maintained public access. So Sheridan Road at the Ravines, Lloyd Park Beach, Spruce Street, Elm Street, Cherry Street, Willow Road, and Elder Lane Beach. Again, mentioned a bit earlier, but the stormwater outfall locations are to be evaluated with the East Side Stormwater Study. And then parking. Public parking is prohibited east of Sheridan Road. The street areas east of Sheridan have been developed such to an extent that allowing additional public parking creates access problems for adequate public safety responses. Allowing additional public parking would likely interfere with the property owner's access to their residences. Elm Street segues into a private roadway. Oak Street is a 1-lane road, and Spruce Street is a very narrow road. So just as a quick summary, here's the recap of the different street ends. As they currently stand, there's public access at Fisher, Spruce, Cherry, and Tower Road Pier. So now that we've reviewed the conditions, it would be helpful for us to go back through each individual street end and discuss the considerations mentioned prior to reviewing all of the current conditions. So we'll go through these one by one and go ahead and address any comments and get some feedback from council.
Okay, Hannah, before we move on to the individual street ends and properties, I think it's important that we sort of put in context what we're here tonight to do, and that is provide guidance, again, if there are areas of legal review that we need, if there are areas of staff review that we need, if there are areas of budget review that we need. Those are the kind of concepts that we want to bring to the table tonight. We don't want to make final decisions on most of these topics, but you can tell that this is, you mentioned one property is complicated. The whole thing is a little bit complicated because we're balancing, public interest. These are publicly owned properties, so that's important to know. But we also have neighbors, private interest neighbors, who abut these properties. And we are not alone in this issue of street ends. I was talking over the weekend with a friend of mine in Glencoe who was very involved with Glencoe street ends. He said they have 4 street ends. 2 are basically closed, and 2 have been beautifully refurbished and are very popular for local residents. And the neighbors, he said, have been fine with it. So there are ways to creatively think about these properties, but do it in a respectful manner. And I hope that we can come away tonight with just the guidance that the staff needs, that the council needs, and that that we as a group need, keeping in mind that there are neighbors to these properties. I mean, that.
As well as the fact, Bob, that there are capital costs, and we have a very tight capital budget. And to simply say, yeah, we'd love to open up and enhance every one of these.
Right.
Awesome.
We'll have to, we'll
It's
have to
not like
figure that
we're
out.
swimming in a lot of cash.
That's going to be one of the challenges. So anyway, now we double back, and after each individual property is reviewed, we'll have a moment for public comment if anyone wants to comment on those specific properties. So Hannah, thank you.
Okay. I will really open the floor to council. Again, Fisher Lane, fair to say it's in generally good shape given all the improvements that had taken place in 2015. We could explore better defining the public-private boundary. Definitely want to, seek understanding from council on how we can consistently have signage across all of the street ends. So I think those would be the main things we'd be looking for some input on as it relates to Fisher Lane, unless council has anything else that they'd like to raise.
There was one point to the signage. So when I went down there, obviously the property owner has indicated that the beach is private property. But I think one of the things that we can be maybe more consistent on, because I noticed this on the other beaches, is to indicate where people can walk, right? I think we assume that many people know, and I think that the vast majority of people are considerate. But just because somebody says, the beach is mine, doesn't mean that if you want to walk walk the beach, you can do that.
Right.
So I think that, there and at Cherry, at the public access points, clarity and consistency, I think, would be helpful.
So Hannah, have you given thought to demarking private and public lines?
That's what you're supposed to tell us, Bob.
We
No,
will, but I'm sure you've given it thought.
It could look a variety of different ways. I mean, it could take place in the form of landscaping. It could be some kind of indicator, it could be a wooden post with some ropes to, differentiate that east-west boundary. I think, some of it would kind of be what's amenable with that neighbor. So there's different ways we could go about it, where we could try to, hopefully reduce the inconsistency with signage too that is put up by the private homeowner. So that way it's just kind of, hey, the village wants to know where the public-private boundary is. So I know that doesn't give you a whole lot, but it could look a couple different ways.
Okay, that's good. And down at Fisher, down at the ravines, you noted some of the private property signage. How does our sign code fit with that? Are those signs appropriate for that location? What's the staff feel on that?
That is a great question. Peter, in terms of the signage, would you mind kind of speaking to that and what is permitted in terms of signage?
We've had a lot of resident feedback on those
Yeah.
signs at Fisher.
It's sign by sign, but I think our community development department knows about those signs and would have issued violation notices if any of the signs were put up without a permit or were in locations that they were not allowed.
So a sign that says no private property, no trespassing, generally, are we okay with a sign on a private property making that declaration?
Yeah, I mean, what the sign says is a First Amendment issue, right? I was talking about the location as a zoning matter, whether it's in a right location, whether it's been permitted. But property owners do have a First Amendment right to have signs and express themselves. And saying on their private property, no trespassing is clear, that is something a private property owner has the ability to do.
So our community development staff would be the group that would review the appropriateness of the location of the signage?
Correct.
Okay. So if there are issues with signage on any of these properties, that's up to Scott and Ann Clausen and so on to organize a review of that signage.
We have to be very clear on this because where they're placed on that Fisher, from the pictures I saw, are out on the jet, all the way across, so it's almost prohibiting
At
people.
Fisher?
On Fisher?
On
Or-
Fisher,
are you-
on the stone wall. And people are trying to cross. The pictures that I saw that the residents had sent into the council, that's going to be important we should look at this unilaterally. So we apply it unilaterally on signage.
Okay,
Because you
so-
don't want to be intimidating the residents from crossing where they have the right to cross.
But I think the takeaway on this, from a staff direction standpoint, is to have our community development department review the signage location at these various street ends.
Yes, all of it.
See if it's appropriate.
Since I know, Bridget, you were going to say, since we're on this topic of signage, I understand it's a freedom of speech. Can signs be threatening? Can they threaten legal action? Can they threaten force? Is that all, is that all allowed under free speech?
I would say threatening legal action, generally, yes, right? That's an expression of somebody's opinion. I would defer to the police chief on threatening force and a violent act. That starts to get into an area where free speech is limited, but it depends on the exact words.
Yeah.
May I just jump in on this? First, I thought that we had already had some kind of review of the signs and we were having some kind of discussion. But secondly, if I put a professional village-looking sign on my front lawn that said, if your dog pees on my lawn, I will shoot you, would that be problematic, or is that my First Amendment right?
I think that would be problematic.
So how is that different than if you walk onto this beach?
I don't know of any signs that say, I will shoot you.
I think there's one says, I have a gun and
Not
will
on
use
Fisher,
it.
but elsewhere?
Somewhere else.
Chief, do you have any thoughts on this
Says, I
or
will
not?
shoot you.
You can defer if you want to defer.
Yeah, I respectfully would like to defer on.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. All right,
I'm sorry, I just want to kind of, so when I was down at Fisher, I didn't see any signs on the stone break wall on the groin. I just saw them, they were on the fence indicating private property. And I do think that, we do need to stipulate, I'm not sure I'd be in favor of ropes or anything like that. Here again, in my mind, the 90% rule, 90% of the people are just going to go for a walk. And if they know where to walk, they're going to respect that. And I'm not sure I want to go through the effort of having to line out, and if we have a problem, the homeowner can complain and we'll address the individual issue.
Yeah, I'd be interested in like examples of landscaping, whether it's like borders of grasses that sort of fade off or something like that to just sort of,
Yeah, but does that
Gently-
mean then we, as a
Well-
village, have to maintain
well, to me,
grass?
I threw out the idea of grasses,
no, I mean,
meaning they
yeah,
sort of,
yeah.
are natural. But just going back to the signage, so in other words, our community development would look at everything from size to type, but not necessarily content. That's,
mainly, I think, location too,
and location.
how they appropriately located, yeah.
I would love some uniform, just so it's uniform. too.
Right, I think it'd be nice to have like a design standard for all of village-owned public access points.
For the
So
village
We're
signage.
talking about.
Village.
For village
one
signage,
Village
yes,
owned, but I think we're talking about also people putting up their own signage.
I'd like that too, if we could, but give them
I mean,
options.
we have lawn signs all over the city, all over the village that say, I'm the proud parent of blanket, we can't.
That's a special rule, though, they can do
Oh,
that.
okay.
I might suggest we treat them as two separate topics.
Yeah.
But my general concern would be, or not concern, but recommendation is that whether it's here or any of the other public access points, that we have some consistency on how signage is created, displayed, where it's placed relative to the use. So, right, if it's more of a utility use, it's going to have different possibly rules or safety requirements. If it's a public access like this, where people can go on the beach, right, might have some other rules. But right now, I mean, like, I walk by this multiple times a week. This is on my walking route. I actually love this vantage point. It's very utilitarian. There's no feel-good sort of design, architectural element to it. Sorry, it was like an afterthought for it to be an access point. That's what it feels like. I would say, and I'm going to repeat my comments as we go through the others, it would be great, and this is probably going to be low on the totem pole relative to any sort of future improvements because it already exists. But it would be great to have some standards for signage so we don't have a hodgepodge of signs just sort of attached to various points. So we've got something that looks better.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just say it right now because it'll apply to all the others, depending on the use. So like this would be a public access use, not just to look, but to access the water, that we have some sort of design standard relative to its conditions, but also to add some sort of quality architectural or design standard, whether it be a bench, whether it be how we create a seat wall like they have in Glencoe, or whatever those elements are, so we could have some consistency among all these access points, and also for the community and for visitors. So it not only landscaping, but it could be hardscaping or other sort of built elements that help reinforce that this is a welcoming public space, inviting. I personally cherish
Residents
all
down
of these access points. I was editorial, went today and visited all of them, and was blown away. I had never known Oak Street was actually owned by the village. And I'm looking, I'm like,
Well, that's a signage, that's.
right,
a good
it's like the perfect example of like an underutilized asset that we as a community aren't taking advantage of. And I would just back on the consistency thing, kind of riding the coattails of Scott's comments.
We'll get to Oak Street.
Yeah, but I would just say, having something where, just like any, I shouldn't say any, but a lot of communities that reinvest or invest into their public infrastructure, make these, again, appropriate for the use, but something that is at the caliber of what we would do as a community.
Okay, so Hannah, I think there's a direction, as we talk about signage, to have a consistency of public signage at all the street ends.
Absolutely,
It
makes
has to be
sense.
appropriate. If it's Willow Road would be different than Spruce Street. I mean, it's just the nature of the usage and the neighbors and so on and so forth. So I think that's going to be a takeaway. We can just dispense with that on the signage. Okay. Anything else on the ravines, the Fisher Lane? Personally, Kirk, I think that this is the one that's most like in place. I mean,
Right.
you know, yes, there could be a bench down there, yes, there could be a little bit of nice amenity and so on, but it is pretty well built out. People use it.
Fisher?
Fisher, yeah, I call it the ravines, but yeah, Fisher.
Again, walls to traverse, steps to traverse on Fisher.
Well, you can get down on Fisher from the,
I'm talking about
He's talking
along
not
the
the
beach.
breakwater?
Walk
Or south.
north.
That's been an issue. That breakwater has been a topic. I don't know, I think maybe the staff should look into the permitting process of that breakwater. Jim, do you have any comments on that?
You may have to. Come up there.
Yeah, that groin was installed late 90s. So going back retro to asking them to put a staircase over the top would be something that we could reach out to the Corps on, but I don't know if they're going to mandate that to modify or change that stone groin to create that.
It's the rule, isn't it?
Again, though, different
Maybe
permitting,
law, maybe not
different,
the 90s.
different,
Well,
different time.
Again, maybe staff can look into that. Okay? And we'll get a resolution on it. I think part of this.
I can look into it. I
Yeah.
can't guarantee you a
But
resolution.
you can reach out to the Army Corps.
Yes, I
and-
can.
And get pull the permit and that type of thing.
Yep.
Okay? Anything else before we ask for public comment on the ravines of Fisher Lane extension? Public comment on this particular one? Come on up. Just on this street end, okay? Just on this street end.
There's things that are coming to all. So first, so yes, it was not the 90s. Let me,
Go on.
it was not in the 90s. That when you're talking Fisher Lane, the breakwater to the north was permitted in 2010. In the original permit, it had steps. The steps were never put in. It was there was another permit later in the 220 range, you know, for refurbishing. The Corps and the IDNR didn't look. They don't care. There was a no trespassing sign out over the waters of Lake Michigan, which at least the IDNR got rid of that after someone complained. And there is someone complaining about no stairs and that it's a violation of the original permit, and they seem to be doing nothing. Perhaps.
Okay, we're going to look into that one.
Okay, but that's in the original plans. There are steps that were never built. Okay, so very quickly, all of these street ends, including here, Fisher Lane, you can easily demarcate private and public land like you do on every other street in the village. A street, a parkway, a sidewalk, private land. The problem is that none of these do that. They have like narrow paths, and so then there's this question. And I would say that we should clearly make it a street, because we have given up lots of land, and we're going to talk more about this on the other streets. And that would not only make it clear where private and public land is, it would also then give us opportunities to do things like put a couple extra parking spaces on Fisher Lane. We can't do them on Sheridan, but we can push them in a little bit. And we could provide a way for other people to come and enjoy that space. So the street should be made normal. That will demarcate private land, and that will change all the talks about parking, because the reason we say we can't park is because the village has given away all that land over the decades, and now we have private driveways that we say we can't park on.
Okay. Hannah, you're back on, we're on Spruce Street. Oh, other public comment on Fisher?
Prepared a memo, I sent it to you, but I also provided printed copies. Happy to share that. Warren James. Once again, respectfully acknowledge that I first started working on I've been a resident for over 40 years. Growing up here, raising my family here, I'm very familiar with the lakefront. Started working in the Lakefront Master Plan in 2014, 12 years ago. It's now 10 years since the Lakefront Master Plan was adopted. So in that time, I've spent literally thousands of hours, hundreds of meetings. I've been to all these access points. I've studied them. I want to comment generally and then specifically to note this is 100 feet wide. I think it's important to recognize the width of each of these access points, 100 feet versus 40 at Cherry, 66 at most of the others. The discussion of the lake access street ends is long overdue, but the contradiction with the Park District decision is unavoidable. The village will only produce durable results.
Warren, we're talking about Fisher Lane here, okay?
Well, I signed up for public comment for this topic.
We'll have public comment at the end of this if you want to, after we
Okay.
review all the, but this is on Fisher Lane.
Okay,
That's
if
what
you
we
want,
talked
if you want
about.
me to speak to Fisher Lane, I'll say
Talk to
it's
Fisher Lane.
100 feet.
Okay?
It does provide public access. There is signage. That's probably one of the better examples of the public access point. The steps are irregular. It's a little bit unsafe, but it's one of the better access
Okay,
points.
thank you. Any other public comment on Fisher Lane? Okay, we'll move on to Spruce Street.
Okay, moving on to Spruce Street. Sorry, Tower Road. We will talk about Tower Road next.
Okay, we'll talk about Tower Road.
So, again, really just opening it up to council. When it comes to the street end itself, again, as we had mentioned, it's that area kind of down right below the cooling ponds. You know, if we were to explore some kind of public access, we would need to get, you know, legal involved. As mentioned, obviously with the finger parcels, there's a lot to explore there and discussions to be had. So we would need to work with council to have those discussions. And if there were desire to do any kind of capital improvements, depending on what those discussions look like, you know, I think one of our biggest priorities would be fencing off appropriately the plant to ensure the security of that asset. So that's kind of what I'll say about Tower and see what council direction there
Thoughts or
is.
questions for Hannah before we go to public comment on Tower Road right away?
My general feeling about this in its current state, I kind of think of the public portion that is in discussion right now is similar to like the yards, right? It's, my general feeling, it's more of a utilitarian use, although it'd be great to expand public access to the lake shore that's village-owned. I don't see that there's a benefit to the public, and it seems like it might interfere with the utility or the use, the way the plant is currently being used.
I would echo that. I look at this and say, to Scott's point, we don't have an unlimited amount of money here. So I think we need to kind of rank the important, you know, the usefulness to the residents. And we have a beach at Tower and we have a beach at Lloyd that flank this. So it wouldn't be my first choice to spend a lot of money here to do this.
I'm sorry, I'll just add, bantering with Rob's comments. It would be helpful, as we've talked about in the past, about the future of the plant and the cooling ponds and how this whole area gets reimagined, right? This will definitely be a key part of that.
Good point.
And I guess to that point, I agree, I wouldn't put any more effort into this. But it sounds like there is a question around what really the public right-of-way is or the public access is versus what is private property. And that sounds like an issue that we've just kind of kicked down the road because there's no compelling reason. I don't know if...
Yeah. So we looked at this hard, as Mr. James noted in his memo. This is a very unusual set of property issues combined with them being on the lakefront, which makes it doubly difficult. Those finger lots, they all obviously have some access. They're riparian landowners, so they absolutely have some access to the lake. The fact that the lake level, when those finger lots were created, you know, the plat shows them going right up to the lake, and now the lake has moved eastward. So where do they go? We looked at this hard. We found a letter from the village attorney back in the late 1960s. He looked at it hard because at the time the village was thinking of putting a pipe in, and he concluded that it is entirely unclear. Under the law,
Established that it's unclear.
we
for at
established
least
it's unclear.
60
And so we concluded that if we want to do something in that area, then we should talk to those property owners and see if there can be an agreement. Because if the village if the property owners just went in and tried to do something, or we just went in and tried to do something, it's inevitably going to be a dispute because it's just not clear. I'll just get a little bit more specific. You see that those Finger Lakes, the Finger Lots, angle.
Yeah.
So the question is, under Illinois law, do they continue to angle, or there's some case law that says there's called a rule of perpendicularity, or do they, as soon as they get to their original lot line, do they then go perpendicular to the lake, which would force them to be conflict with Tower Road? I think, regardless of that question, the village is also a riparian landowner here.
right.
Tower Road is the village's road. There's no law that says that a municipality that owns a road that ends at the lake doesn't have riparian rights, some riparian rights. So it's just not clear. We could take a position, but it would inevitably be in conflict and vice versa with the property owners.
I mean, I'm not advocating that we take a specific stand and say, this is ours, this is theirs. But I do think it's something that we should sort out, and it'd be great to sort it out through negotiations, through just the conversation. You know, there's no intent or no plan or no money to do anything now, but it's something that probably, you know, deserves some clarity.
10 years from now, there may be
10 years
an
from
issue.
now, there might be.
There
Right,
might be.
Right.
I do know that we have a neighbor, a property owner here. Joe, do you want to talk to this at all or not? Come on up.
Want to just give us the right to all your land?
Just
Is
give
that-
us those
yeah,
those finger lots.
I have a lot to say. Joe Dooley, I live at 849 Sheridan Road. I'm one of the, I own one of the 7 parcels there. It would be our position, since the 1923 plat, that the 155 feet of land that the 7 finger lots have still is owned by the 7 finger lots. The sand that has accreted on that beach is due to an artificial condition of the Lloyd Pier and the Tower Pier. Under the 1917 Supreme Court case of Brundage versus Knox, the accretion by artificial means, and I'm paraphrasing, but it basically inures to the benefit of the property owner who did not create the accretion. We get the benefit. So the 155 feet would go all the way down to the water's edge, because under Brundage, we are riparian owners, and it would be in conflict for us to lose the right to the water because the sand has increased between where the property line originally was demarcated in the original plat, has now been expanded by sand accretion to the water. We get the benefit of all that sand all the way to the water, as does the village, who has 50 feet of this property. You get the same property right all the way to the water. So we're sharing a property 155 feet and 50 feet all the way to the water. A couple of years ago, the Park District approached us, it's the 7 landowners, to help them because, and when I was on the park board, I know this issue is a big issue. The sand crosses the road, the Lloyd Pier, and goes into the launch area, so they have to take all that sand out each year so that boats can launch at the launch facility. Their solution a couple of years ago was to get together with us and you, the village, to see if we would agree that the Park District could grade the beach, the total beach, take the sand out, remove it so it's at a lower level, and put it over on Lloyd so that the sand will stop coming over into the launch area. We, as the 7 landowners, agreed to that. Then the village said, and this is the part I'm interested in, and I'd like you to be interested in, said there's a pipe running under the beach. So I think it's a water main. I'm not sure. I'd like to know the answer to that now if anybody knows. But it's over 105-year-old pipe. And they said, the village said, if we're going to go into this agreement, if there's going to be sand grooming equipment coming onto that beach, that if that pipe breaks, that's like 30 feet under the beach, and it's over 105 years old, if it breaks, the property owners and the park district would assume liability for that pipe. So we said, we're not doing this deal. We'll wait for the pipe to break on its own, and you can come and fix it, and then maybe we'll relook at the deal, if that's what we're talking about here. But I don't even remember what the pipe's for. I do know that this year, I got notice that there was going to be some sort of repair or digging on the beach to that pipe. I don't even know if that's occurred yet, because I got the notice
Any thought on this?
when I was out of town, and I didn't ever see any digging.
Hang on one sec, Joe.
Yeah, it is Jim.
Or Nick or Jim,
There is
do you have any thought on this pipe that Mr. Dooley's talking about? The- Well, is there a pipe, a 100-year-old pipe? Is that a water main? What is that under there?
Water intake.
And it's an active water intake?
Yes.
And did we do work on that this year, or were we going to do work on that?
We did some pond dredging in the south pond to clear some accreted sand.
Okay.
That was the.
So that pipe is alive and working, Joe?
Right, and so the work that was done was, I didn't hear you said dredging of the pond?
Yeah, there was an issue with a stormwater outfall in the south.
Not sure, he's sitting.
Thanks, Scott. There was an issue with our stormwater outfall for the plant is in the south pond. It was clogged with sand, so we used some equipment to do some minor dredging to clear that sand away from the outfall.
Okay,
Yep.
so that work's been done. I just.
Yep,
didn't
that work's been
even
completed.
Know
Yep.
what was going on there. So if the village wants to revisit the sand removal issue without it putting the liability for a 105-year-old pipe on us, the landowners, we'd be willing to help the park district to stop having their, the launch facility fill with sand every year. What they've done is they put up these huge concrete blocks like you see, when there's a construction going on a highway. And what that does is just building dunes on our beach, because you can just keep piling a wall and the sand just keeps going up against it. So they put one, the sand, I think they're about 3 feet high. They put one, the sand got to the top, so they put another one. That's about now 6 feet high. The sand is getting to the top, and it'll probably go over there now. So there is an issue with the sand on our beach, the one owned by us and you, causing a problem for the park district, and it would be nice if we could get together again and try to resolve that problem. The other issue is, when you talk about getting down to that beach, if you're talking about using the public part of the beach for any purposes that you're looking at, there's really no access point for the public, because my understanding is the power plant has restrictions on public using that land in front and around the power plant. Under the Department of Homeland Security and federal law, there are security issues with power and utility plants that prohibit the public from entering from that area. So there's really no public access point to your 50 feet of beach.
Yeah.
That's an issue.
Yeah. I think that this one is very clear that we need to do some work, and I agree, Scott. For the future generations of Winnetka, we should get this issue squared away, because someday that 50 feet of beach that the village owns might be important. It's not important right now in terms of public access or what have you, but we should clarify this. And Peter, I don't know how much more we can go to try to clarify this. We should clarify this pipe situation. Joe, you mentioned me the other day, there's an easement of some sort.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you there was a pipe under, and I was asking you what work is being done. Is there going to be digging or whatever? And I didn't know. But that's the pipe we're talking about that we don't want to crush with the beachcomber. So
That's the easement you're talking about.
that's an easement. There's a pipe easement there. Correct.
So is the direction, to me, the direction to staff on this and to legal counsel, is so let's get our arms around this. Joe, are you a spokesperson for these finger lot owners?
I am, because I'm now the longest landowner of this 7. We've been there since '99. We've got new people that keep coming and going. So they all look to me, and as a former park board member and commissioner, they think I know everything about parks in the village, and I don't know. But yeah, just because I'm old and I've been there a long time.
I don't think this is something that has to be done next week.
But I'd be the
I think we
spokesperson for
I think we need to get our arms around this and not kick it down the road again. So there might be some dialogue between Peter and you, Joe, village staff, Joe,
Okay.
Let's just try to figure this
And
out.
just one final point.
Okay.
Because it even came up in the Brundage decision. We, as owners of those finger lots, as you're calling them, we pay property taxes for those finger lots as a separate tax bill. We get a bill for our homes, and then we get a bill for our finger, which has gone up and up every year. But we do pay taxes for
Okay.
the beach.
Okay.
Just
Well-
People, something might think we're taking advantage of some sort of easement that was given to us by the village or something. No, we own that land and pay property taxes for it.
Okay, well, it's a nice beach. It's a nice beach, so,
All right.
okay.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Mr. Winnett or Mr. James?
I did provide separate correspondence on this, including historical imagery. So I hope you've all taken a look at that. Those pictures from 1951 clearly show that the shoreline is back where it was platted February 14th, 1923. There's another, just in case you're wondering, as to the village's acknowledgement of the limitations of its property ownership, look carefully at the power plant. The corner of that power plant does not come to a 90-degree angle. It's clipped. It's clipped in recognition that that's where the village's property ends. And so I would concur with Peter's 2023 opinion, and we said tonight the rule of perpendicularity, that 155 feet that was platted in 1923 continues to extend. You know, the contradictory statement would be continue Tower Road, and Joe and his friends have zero beach access, and clearly that wouldn't be right. Okay. So I do think it should be clarified, and hopefully the Park District, the village, and 7 owners could cooperate and get that sand management agreement done.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Winnichenko?
Hello. Hey, I guess I'm not even going to look at my timer. Just as a general thing, first, I think saying that the beach is private is a problem. We should avoid things because we're really not sure. Brundage, interesting. If you really read the decision, there's some question, especially given that Brundage was a councilman on the Evanston Council that voted to put the pier there. But the reason I wanted to come up here and talk about Tower is it's a great example of how the streets have been privatized. If you look at the picture and you look west of Sheridan, you see Tower is a full length, that's a 66-foot wide public right-of-way. Tower is normal, has sidewalks, has a full-length street, and then you go east of Sheridan, and all of a sudden it becomes this tiny driveway. And that's interesting because up until the 70s, when they had semis, 18-wheelers, delivering coal to the power plant, they would back up from Sheridan all the way to the coal chute. It was only after that was closed that the village apparently decided that we didn't have to have a wide street. We could make it into a private driveway for a few homeowners, and we can make it curvy and plant trees out there. And now to say that we can't use that street and we can't have parking on it because it's no longer wide enough, if we stop there, then we have abdicated our responsibility for correcting decades of inequity. The reason I say that is because while it is true that there might be homeland security concerns, we don't know that for a fact, and that coal chute, that former coal chute is a gigantic patio with spectacular views of the lake. And the only thing that stops people from going out to it is a fence at the end of the road over the chute. And there might be other issues, but not to explore the possibility of re-widening that street and allowing access to that patio area, I think is problematic.
Thank you. I don't know about re-widening the street, but personally, I would want village staff to look at that coal chute patio because there is a security issue, but I think we should define that. But I agree with Mr. Winnichenko that that's a beautiful overlook. Could be a great amenity, and we should just clarify whether it's something that we should be looking into. Yeah. So is that something we could do?
I'm making a list.
Okay, good. Okay, can we move on now from Tower?
Can I just piggyback off your comment and then comment that Ted had made? It does beg the question, right? Like we were looking at the Fisher, where whatever connection, we're trying to talk about signage and demarcating between public and private. Whether it's at the lake shore, anywhere else in the village, I agree with the comments about it's easy to, right, when you have a parkway and a sidewalk, we all know. And it would be nice to have some clarity just in commonality or whatever throughout the village, not just at the lake shore. on where these elements exist, so we don't have confusion in the future or between the public and private homeowners about ownership.
So specifically to Tower Road right-of-way, what are you suggesting
I
there?
think, well, echoing some of the comments Ted made, having some consistency where we have public and private property abutting each other.
Okay.
In terms of how we, whether it's demarcation, signage, however it's treated.
Okay. Got that one? All right. Come on up.
One short comment. Tower was indeed proposed as a potential location for the dog beach, but because of this specific lack of clarity regarding ownership, it was an outstanding question that prevented us from pursuing that.
Which tower? The right-of-way or the
The beach.
Tower
beach.
Road, the
Yeah, Tower Road
north,
Beach.
north?
Yes, yes. All of the locations at Tower were considered, and those locations, the ownership was not clear. And that was an outstanding question, and that was why Tower was not considered.
The
because that
ownership
question-
of Tower Road Beach, north
Beach?
of the plant?
Yes,
You're saying has an ownership?
south of the beach.
South, okay.
Yes.
Fine.
Yes.
Not north, south, understood, understood. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Okay, any other comments from council on Tower Road right-of-way? Joe, thanks for coming, we appreciate it. Okay, Hannah,
Now we're at Spruce Street.
now we're at Spruce Street.
All right. As mentioned, there will be reinstallation of stairs at this location in fiscal year '27. So the, public access will be restored, if you will. So I think with that being said, a lot of what we've already heard, consistent signage, things like that, that we will look at as it relates to this location, especially as it becomes fully kind of open to the public again. So.
Okay. Any thoughts before we go to public comment on Spruce Street? Rob, you look like you...
No, I'm just,
No?
I think it's great. Are there any unusual impediments or things that we have to address on Spruce?
Yeah, well, I know the neighbors are here. I had a chance to visit with the neighbors. Kristen and Tom Powers visited with the neighbors. This location, it's a beautiful location. It's a beautiful piece of property that the neighbors have maintained on behalf of the village, just for the record on this. And when I make comments about being respectful to the neighbors, I think this one fits right into that context. And so I think, I think that is an access point that residents and other visitors to town can access, but I think we need to do it in a really high-class way as we're approaching this one. So, as all of them. I don't know, Warren, Catherine, do you want to speak on this?
I think we both want to say a couple things, but I'll start. Catherine Guthrie, and we live at the south side of the Spruce Street easement. The one thing I wanted to say is, I know it's already been approved for the stairs. The concept that we got for the stairs, it looks like the Mercedes of all staircases. So as a taxpayer, I'd be really interested to know what that costs, considering we're only 2 blocks from Maple Beach. So, that's just, it would be an interesting thing for me. The other thing is that you mentioned, I think, that there's no swimming at Spruce Street, I think in one of your charts.
Is it the 2001 chart?
I don't know, but I will tell you, if you reinstate the stairs, it will be a magnet for teens from Maple Beach. It's just, it's just crazy there in the summer. It's like a party all the time. The last thing that I would share is relative to the signage. 99% of the people who walk down the easement have dogs. And so I didn't realize this whole Centennial thing was going on, but the minute those stairs go up, if they go up, there's going to be, there's going to be dogs everywhere. So if you do standardize the signage, I think there needs to be something that addresses the dog situation.
Have you noticed, are the dogs on leash or off leash or?
Both. Mostly people are super respectful. I mean, right now, we have a great relationship with the way it goes, and, it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
But I know from when we had the stairs in there before, it wasn't necessarily a win-win. So hopefully, we can work with you guys on signage and security. And landscaping's a big issue because the village, for years, the grass would be this high, so. If the stairs go in, we want to.
Catherine, was there a pathway from the road to the stairwell?
No, there's never been one.
So it's just, they've
Always
cut-
been grass.
Always been grass?
Yeah, but the
Okay.
grass was this high, for a long time, so
Right.
people couldn't even walk down there. Anyway,
So what we're talking about is bringing that condition back. So there's not going to be a pathway, that we're
Right.
not talking about building a sidewalk
Right.
across the lawn.
just leave it the way it is.
Leave it the way it is, and there will be a stairwell.
We'll continue to maintain it.
Okay.
And
You're
you don't
doing a
have to spend any
beautiful job.
money on, you don't have to spend any money on new landscaping, because we've spent a fortune, and people walk by and love it, so,
It's very nice.
anyway.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, Warren, do you have any thoughts?
Not really. I mean, I was a little bit surprised that they decided to definitely do the stairs. So, okay, so we know that. So I don't really have that much different to say from what you said. I'm about to be 71. When I was 12, taking care of that place, the grass was up this high. And since I was a teenager, we've been kind of helping with that, and our next door neighbors help with that as well. And I do appreciate that over the time, with the whole thing about the pier and everything, that there has been really good cooperation with the village, and I really appreciate that. There are some times when people didn't talk to us, and I'd just like to say I'd prefer that doesn't happen. Because like you said, they have like a narrow street around, it goes around. That got very much narrow. We didn't know that was going to happen. And our next door neighbor has a lot of big trucks there all the time. So it's hard for everybody. So the only thing I would say is it's been really good working with you guys, and I appreciate your comments. And it's just good if we can keep communication, and I appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
We will commit to that, for sure. Any other public comment on Spruce Street? Mr. Winnichenko, back at, another bite at the apple here.
You want to just sit in the front row.
So I appreciate, people stepping up and trying to help. But there is another side to this story, right? The other side to this story is that we have a street, again, that's narrow, that doesn't allow parking. There are sidewalks. I believe, and I can't be 100% sure, but I believe the flagpole in front of that property is actually in the public right-of-way, and as well as a wall at the top of the ravine extends out into the public right-of-way. And what I'm saying is yes, if I could, say to you guys, hey, rip up Oak Street in front of my house and make it into a big grassy field, and I'll help take care of it and pay for all the maintenance of that, that'd be great, because then I wouldn't have cars going up and down my street. So, I mean, I appreciate that we want to do things respectfully and we want to do things thoughtfully, but I think we got to be careful at how our decisions impact access for the public. And in this case, we've essentially allowed for maintenance an area that is difficult. Now, with the stairs coming back, that's great. If we could somehow arrange for some parking spaces, that would be even better. But I think we just want to look at both sides of this. We don't want to just succumb to the private property owner's wishes.
I think Winnetka should be Winnetka for sure. I would make a point, though, on my visit to Glencoe and my conversations with Glencoe residents, the areas around their public access points, their street ends, are very restricted parking. You go up there, you cannot park within 3 blocks of those access points. For good or for bad, Ted.
Yeah, but that's the point I'm trying to make, because we're not Glencoe. I mean,
I understand.
And I'm just saying that, the lake isn't ours. The lake is not Winnetka's.
And we're committed, when it comes to Spruce Street, to provide public access.
All right.
Warren?
My primary argument tonight is about consistency. And I think we should be thanking Warren and Catherine Guthrie because they are the model citizens for maintaining public open access. They spend their time and energy to keep it looking beautiful. It's well maintained. This should be the model for the street ends. And if dollars are scarce, why put the stairs here? As they said, They're Maple. If dollars are scarce, improve the other beach ends to provide the type of views and vistas that are afforded at Spruce should be provided at the other street ends.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not either.
That was a public comment, that's fine.
I think you've struck the right balance, Bob, of what we're trying to do with a private, respecting private, but trying to do this the right way.
Yeah. Scott?
So I agree with the overall point that, we got to strike the public-private balance here. The question I do have is, if we have taken a street, we're looking at Spruce now, and the public right-of-way is wider than the street, we somehow should denote that, right? I think we've got to be careful not to have a de facto abrogation
too
of
hard to-
public
yeah,
land.
yeah.
So I don't know how we do that, right? You're not going to put signs, along the way, but I think we should give that some thought.
Well,
I
may-
don't have an
yeah.
answer on that one. but-
Understood. Maybe we should identify those areas that around these
away.
street ends that we're talking about here that situation applies.
Everyone should know.
And we should just give that some thought.
That's a great idea, because even looking at this picture, I was trying to figure out where it was. I didn't realize it was the whole thing.
Well, even the
So,
Guthries said
yeah,
that they
so-
weren't aware that the street was going to be narrowed or whatever,
Right.
and it just happened, and
Yeah, the turnaround part.
the turnaround part.
Yeah,
Now there is a sign saying it's private property here,
yeah.
to the right.
Yeah, the signage there is very
Okay.
clear.
So it's clear right now.
And people are respectful. I mean, it all
Yeah.
works.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay. Good point, Scott. And Kristen, why don't we note that? Any other comments on Spruce Street? Come on up.
Alan Welch. I wanted to reiterate the same issue that exists up at Fisher. The breakwater to the north of Spruce has no stairs over it, and they just finished new construction on that within the last 2 years. So why is it that the Corps or the IDNR didn't require those steps in there, or did they and it just got overlooked? I'd like to,
Okay.
know, because
Good point.
that
Yeah.
makes it a lot easier to walk the lakefront.
Jim, can we look into that one? I know, but you can check on the permit and records on that breakwater?
Well,
Okay,
the
good.
IDNR was pretty clear when they're here. They just don't, it's up to us to police
Okay.
our own self.
Well, let's look into that, Ellen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on Spruce Street or around Spruce Street? Okay, we'll move on to what, Hannah?
Are we doing discussion on these, or
Oh,
we
wait, Sure, if you want to talk about Spruce Street.
I'll make a comment. So this afternoon, I stopped by. Catherine was out tending to the weeds on the island. And I got to say, for anybody in the community, like, this is, because thanks to the Guthries, like, this is the poster child of sort of the impact that we want to have when the community has access to view the lake. Right. I do want to raise the question about accessibility. It was commented that the stairs that we approved aren't ADA accessible, but it does beg the question, right? In a situation like this where you have a fair amount of distance from, let's say, an accessible route, which would be the street, to whatever that vantage point would be. If we're going to, just like we talked about earlier with consistency with signage, and my suggestion in closing remarks are going to be about, like, as we think super long-term, whether it's this council or future generations, as capital projects come up and there's opportunities to improve the public access, having consistency and creating a welcoming place that the community can all access. So I'll leave it at that, but I think this would deserve a reconsideration for accessibility. Not necessarily to the shore, but to be able to afford the views.
Thoughts on that?
I mean, I would put this in the category of, I agree, it's a question of prioritization, right? Do we do it all now, right? The stairs and the accessibility and the viewing, right, all that? Or do we say, yes, that is something that we're going to put on our capital list and we're going to prioritize it relative to all the other things?
Right, irrespective of timing, I would say I agree with what you're saying, Scott.
I think directionally, we put out a list. I think, we can do all that.
And I think just bantering on the idea with accessibility, right? It's easy on all the other streets in our village where we have sidewalks, right? That's an accessible route that is immediately adjacent to private property. I'm not suggesting we line sidewalks on all of these street ends, but having that accessible route on public land, I think, is helpful and important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I put a lot of credence here in the way this property has been handled over generations. And the past generations, owners of this property have allowed public access, so on, and it has been the way that we're talking about bringing it back. And so I know what you're saying this, Kirk, and I think we have ADA access to other village-owned
And there are
properties.
gradations of ADA access.
And
So do we have to have it wheelchair accessible from the street down to the beach?
No, that's not what I'm
Is it
saying.
a place where somebody with a walking difficulty could sit and look out, maybe?
I'm trying to remember, when we met, Warren and Catherine, did you mention that people do with wheelchairs and so on come?
There's somebody who goes there at least twice a week. He pushes his mom.
Wow.
We keep the grass purposefully short.
Yeah. So,
And, yeah, I mean, he's there regularly, so it's not a problem.
I mean, it's not ADA compliant per se, but it is accessible for
I'm
viewing.
not suggesting something has to be a sidewalk. Like, one of the best examples I feel in Glencoe is South Avenue, their overlook.
Yeah,
Right?
beautiful.
There's a gravel path that leads to like a stone ledge, and that's actually a nice place to visit.
We may be able to do that tower or other places too.
Right.
Okay, thank you for that, Kirk. Other thoughts here before we move on to the next? Kim, anything?
Keep going.
Okay, let's move on. Hannah, what do we got?
I think that one is a good segue for Elm. Again, right now, Elm is just maintenance only, no public access. This would be one place where we could explore what public, passive recreational use could look like, is at the form of an overlook that we were just talking about. It does have, if you recall from the pictures, kind of a long pathway that leads up to the lake. So, looking for some guidance from council, again, knowing that there are significant other infrastructure improvements in our 20-year capital plan and, other priorities, but is it something that, staff should explore and then bring forward ideas to council?
Thoughts on that for Hannah?
Well, my first reaction is I like that idea, given of all the street ends. This is right, the center of town. It's our main drag, and having an overlook there would be a nice exclamation point.
Okay.
I'm going to lump elm, oak, and spruce all as the same, and what the Guthries have done to spruce is sort of like a model example of, how a public space can be improved and utilized. And especially, like I said, when we started this, I had no idea oak was a public street end. And you look at it today, right? Not only underutilized, I mean, it actually looks like it's private property. And I now I'm like wishing we had that access right now, that the community could enjoy these overlooks.
Well, go ahead, Scott.
Sorry, if I recall, this is the one, when I walked down there, where it's this metal fencing with the points are kind of angled in toward you to prevent you from climbing in. And when you look, obviously I did not try and scale that, but when you look down, it's pretty difficult conditions beyond the fence, right? There's,
Well,
I guess-
So this is
That way an
showing,
overlook would be,
well, I'm even
would make
wondering.
sense versus,
Right, but I'm even wondering I know we're not making decisions on when to do stuff, but it would seem that this would be a fair amount of effort to turn this into an overlook in terms of repaving and grading and, I don't know.
I think it begs the question, like, what's the opportunity for this entire portion? Not just, right,
I'm
the
not- yeah,
street
I'm-
end, but like at the shoreline, Is there a reason why it exists the way it does? Is it necessary to have it, could there be some, whatever, environmental restoration type work to restore it to some other, whether or not it's sand, but some sort of other accessible or, like was suggested, an overlook?
I think this one is one that we want staff to explore and give us some options on this, because there is some infrastructure already there, not that we can necessarily use that roadway down there. It might be built up or whatever if it turns out to be an overlook. And again, to Kirk's point, it is rubble down there at the beachfront, but does it have to be that way? We don't know, but this is one, I think, that there is opportunity,
Yeah.
to Trustee Handler's point. And so if,
I'd be
I think
fine
that-
exploring stuff.
I
We
think
just
that,
have to prioritize it within all the other stuff. that we
correct. And there could be grant opportunities. We know, who knows where we would find the money for this type of thing, but I think, personally, I think Elm Street is one to look into.
No matter what we do from a standpoint of what we go with first, I think you have to look at this holistically. These two will be overlooks, these two go, and these two stay. I mean, we just can't do it. We have to look at the whole plan.
I think that's right. Okay?
Could I
so-
just
Yeah.
interject, take a step further, like the comment I made about thinking very long-term, right? If we do visioning now, for one, can we create some design consistency or some visioning, whether or not something happens now or 10, 20 years from now? So at least future generations have at least a kind of like the Burnham plan for the town, right? Like, here was an idea where we could create that consistency among all these connection points.
Yeah, I don't know. Hannah, what did they say about Elm Street 25 years ago? I mean,
Just that, back then, there had been requests from property owners for the village to vacate and sell the property.
Yeah.
That there was incidents of drug use, other inappropriate behavior, it was an attractive nuisance, things of that
Okay.
nature.
But we could look out 25 years, but I think we should maybe try to have a little more accelerated time frame than that in terms of how these might be utilized, because otherwise we're just punting everything down.
I'm not saying we don't do them for 25 years. I'm saying as we think about
what they're, how they're going to work
echoing Rob's
together.
comment that we should look at collectively, and if we're going to, let's say, have, beach access is sort of one design standard. If it's an overlook, it's a different design standard. So there's consistency, just like we have a standard with our curb and gutter and sidewalks and, right, beautification type elements in our town.
Good point.
And if I could actually defer to Jim to talk about the stormwater aspect on this one?
Yeah, and I added a little bit of context to this. So similar to Willow Road, which you'll be talking about shortly, there's a stormwater emergency overflow. So that path that you see down there that you're classifying as a walkway is actually the overflow path. And there's a storm sewer that goes out. And so what happens is there's quite a bit of water that comes off and goes through that area, similar to Willow Road. And that was the overflow route to get down. So all that rubble down there was to stabilize the bluff that eroded out. As you may recall, when we talked about some of the concepts for the east side, this was one of those locations where we would be looking to increase the outfall pipe size and then stabilize and clean the area up, similar to what we had done at Willow Road previously. So this was one of those we looked at as an option to create an overlook. If we're going to excavate down to replace the pipe, do we then build it back with larger boulders, do some revetment work, potentially create an overlook at that point? Again, we would bring the concept back, but this was one of those locations similar to Willow Road, same approach. Just recapping on that.
So this one, from a timing standpoint, gets wrapped up a little bit in the East Side Stormwater Project.
That's correct. You'd want to do it at the same time because the the proposed improvements or the enhancements of the pipe size, it's going to require us to excavate straight through to increase that pipe size anyway. So we'll be doing quite a bit of disturbance. So if we build something there before we do that work, we'll be excavating it all out. So we were trying to coordinate the two to do an enhancements and stormwater at the same time.
But I think, could staff look at the idea of a public amenity in advance of the final stormwater plan, not to construct it, but bring options back to us?
Sure, yeah, we could look at potential. There's many different avenues of when we say an overlook, what does that encompass? But we can gather some general information.
Okay. Any other public comment on Elm Street? Mr. Winnichenko, you look like you're closer to the podium than you were before. Welcome back.
So, yeah, I think Elm Street, I think we should remember that Elm Street, just like Willow, is one of the few places that has road gentle grade down to the water's edge. And I also think that Elm Street is the poster child of private encroachment onto public land without the public even knowing about it. Because while the pictures showed the view to the north, they don't show the fact that the neighbor to the south has put a square fence out over the roadway with a no trespassing private property sign and a grill in the road. And it's shocking that that has been allowed to persist, I know, since at least 2002 when I first told you about it. So that whole thing, you know, could be, and it looks that way because of disrepair, right? It hasn't been maintained. But that could be turned into a street, maybe a couple handicap parking spaces down near the lake, and it would be a beautiful place for people that have maybe mobility issues to get close to the lake and have a chance to experience that.
Well, that's probably something we should look at, whether there's been encroachment on our property. And for the record, no one up here you spoke to in 2002. Okay, maybe.
It's hard.
None of us were up here. So anything else on?
Been out of high school yet.
Oh, 22 you talked. Well, some of us were here. Anything else on Elm Street? Okay, Hannah, let's move on.
Since we will just go to Oak next, so I'll just keep these pictures. Same thing with Oak. Again, touched on it a little bit earlier, but, you know, differentiating, okay, what's the public versus private boundaries? Obviously, there's some private property, if you will, within what would be the village street end. What would council like us to do? Is this another site in the future? Maybe not necessarily right now, but at some point in the future that, you know, we want to do an overlook or something like a spruce at. If we do want to consider, you know, stairs, whatever capital improvements we could explore, what conversations do we need to be having now to clarify those boundaries?
Okay, Oak Street. Kirk?
I already said my comments. You know, oak, spruce, and elm should all be considered at the same time from a design standard standpoint.
We've got a little different issue on Oak Street, I think.
This is the antithesis of the Guthrie.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
but
Can
let's
somebody
just say they're the same width, right? So,
Well, no, we own property there.
No, but I mean, in terms of the clarity of designation of what is private and
correct,
public,
but they're the
it's
same,
antithesis.
they're the same
Yeah,
width.
yeah.
So, right, you look at the
No.
public property adjacent to the Guthries and how beautiful it is. Oak Street could be as beautiful, but right now it is not utilized at all. It's utilized as, or assumed to be private property from a visual standpoint.
Thoughts on that?
No, I'm just trying to really understand what I've been down. Is there an overview of where there's no overview of where the public land cuts through and what they're doing right now? Clearly, this is one of the first, this is the poster child where you have to go in and say, take back this property.
We need to approach the neighbors and reestablish our property rights. I mean, Peter, is there there's no legal precedent. We haven't used this property. It's been basically privatized. There's no legal precedent of
We don't lose title.
ceding control
No.
or anything like that. So, but I think, personally, I think this one needs to be looked at carefully and what we might be able to do there. People agree with that or not?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just looking, the fence, is the fence at the end of it? Is the fence on the boundary of our property and the private property? The fence on the right? Oh, hold on,
So
in that
this
picture.
one and then this one. Oh, sorry, I'm moving my mouse on my computer.
Whose fence is that?
That fence is the private homeowners.
not the
When
village.
you look
And is it
at-
on the village property?
I don't think the fence itself is. So when you're out there, because that is obviously further to the left, some of this walkway comes over behind this bush. This sign right here says private property. So the fence itself, and I can confirm, I don't believe the fence is on village property, but some of the other things you're seeing.
So I think that neighbors get really picky, and we are a neighbor here, and get really picky. My parents have a cottage, and we have our neighbors have a shed, and they built a big plat to put other stuff on, but they built that on the back of their shed and on my parents' property, and they didn't say anything. And while you may not legally lose title, you know, you're slowly having your area taken away from you because if it is exclusively being used by someone else. So if the fence, if any of the stuff is on our property, you know, we should have a conversation and figure out how we're going to deal with these kinds of things. Like, was there also a basketball hoop? Is that ours? Is everybody allowed to play on that? Is that a park? What is that?
Not ours.
I think it's been privatized, okay?
Yeah. So I think,
Intents and purposes, it's been privatized. We need to go reestablish
Yeah.
our ownership rights here. And we need just approach, Hannah, just approach the neighbors. You can help on this a little bit probably. And we need to know what our property lines are, and we need to think about this one from a beautification standpoint and what kind of amenity it might be. Because it could be quite beautiful, like Oak Street. Any public comment on Oak Street?
So I will say that, like you said, I think this is sort of the antithesis of what goes on at Spruce. Although I don't necessarily agree with everything at Spruce, it is certainly much more publicly accessible. This, and I have stuff going back 25 years on this, was a fascinating evolution. So last time they said they were going to maintain no public access in 2000 to this, but in that time, the homeowners have gotten even more aggressive. So that fence that you saw, I think that is on private land. The house to the south, though, they have a post that's in the right-of-way. That house to the north has a basketball hoop. They planted all those plantings down the middle of the street to make it impassable. And that couples back to the entrance to Oak Street from Sheridan. It is the only street here that has an unofficial parkway in the middle of the street with boulders and trees. And that, of course, limits the width of the street on either side. It makes it impossible to park. And I don't know if that was ever really a village plan thing. I think it was just something that they all did over decades to privatize that whole thing. So when you're talking about the street end here, you also have to consider that access point from Sheridan to the end of the street, because that seems improper too.
Okay. All right. Anything else up here on Oak Street? Hannah, do you have a little direction on Oak Street?
Perfect.
Just have to kind of finesse that one a little bit. Okay, I think we have one more. Is that right?
Two more.
Two more.
Getting there.
And then
Oh,
we
yeah.
go
Oh,
back through them all.
Forgot about Cherry. Sorry about that. Let's go to Cherry.
What we can say is that Cherry's in generally good shape. As you saw in the pictures, we have the wooden stairs that go down, and there's the public access and the pier that goes out. You know, something that we may want to consider here, obviously, there's been some discussion around signage, you know, especially potentially signage that could be considered violent or threatening. That has been a topic that has come up at this location. So is there anything that the village would want to do at the bottom, if you will, on the beach, to kind of better dictate or indicate where the boundaries are? Is there a better way at this location to differentiate the public-private boundaries so we can try to reduce reliance on signage and just make it clear, hey, this is where you're allowed to be, that begins private property?
Thoughts on that?
I think Cherry does beg the question, to what extent is it the village's responsibility to demarc when you are leaving public property and entering private property? I'm not suggesting that we don't do anything, but throughout any
That's a good point.
community, there's always a line that separates public and private property, and we don't always have to demarc where one turns into the other.
Peter, do you have a thought on that?
We do not have any obligation to do that.
okay, and can I follow up on that a little bit? Because I think we had a big talk at the beginning of the year, I think, about signage. And at some point, like, we want understanding and rules, but also at some point, you know, signs everywhere there's signs. Like, we don't want to have unnecessary signs. But on that, Peter, this is the sign, you know, that says, you know, no trespassing. By entering this property, you, the trespasser, have given your implied consent to the owner of this property to remove you, the trespasser, by any means necessary, free of any liability claims for injury and/or death of the trespassers, or trespasser's family may file against the owner of this property. You, the trespasser, through your implied consent by trespassing on this or entering into this property illegally, accept all liability and responsibility for your actions, blah, blah, not in big bold letters, not responsible for accidents, injuries, and/or death as a result of trespassing or illegal entry. Warning, small arms impact area may occur as a result of illegal entry onto and/or entry in this property. If I put that on my front lawn and said, if your dog steps on my lawn, be warned that something could happen, and if it pees on my lawn, I have a gun, and you accept responsibility. I don't think that would be at all tolerated. I think this is really over the top, and I don't know how this is allowed. And it also begs the question, when we have problems with these signs, like, what is our recourse? What do we do? Does someone send a letter? Do they get cited? Is there, like, what do we do?
So the question about what do we do, if a sign doesn't comply with our code, it's a code violation, they can be taken to administrative hearing, they get a citation, we try to remove the sign, we try to seek compliance, they can be fined, all sorts of different enforcement actions. On the message on the sign, the issue is there is a First Amendment issue. The First Amendment stops if the sign is deemed to be a credible threat of reckless violence, right? So
And the word is reckless.
Right. So now I will say that property owners have the right, just let me finish this before, property owners have the right to take action to prevent trespass, but death obviously is not a reasonable response to a trespass. Unless the property owner feels that they're in danger. I'm getting into the chief's territory here. So all I'm saying is that each of these signs has to be evaluated separately. That sign is close to the line, I will admit.
Okay.
Well, to your point, Bob, hopefully 99% of the homeowners will realize that's over the pale, and act responsibly. But we need to clean up our signs and our policy just to make sure.
But that's on private property. That sign.
I don't know.
That sign that Bridget read is on private property. I mean, it's on the private beach.
The one I saw was on the beach, not toward the bluff. It was on the beach.
But they own.
Yeah.
Well, that's.
So I do think that that particular sign has received a lot of public interest, and I do think that our village needs to look at that sign and make a determination one way or another if we have a problem with that sign. Okay? Can we just?
I mean, just imagine, from a village standpoint, if we all put these on our lawns.
I understand. I would hope that maybe the homeowner can respond to this, but I would hope that the homeowner would consider a different sign down there. But that's, it hasn't changed yet.
Aside from the discussion on that sign, I'll add just a couple of other comments on Cherry walking down there today. I believe this, although this is likely the smallest access point we have, because of the short pier, it is actually a pretty beautiful outlook, and it's a neat destination. I would encourage us, it does need some trimming, like there's a fair amount of overgrowth, and if we haven't already, we should now start budgeting for the capital improvement of the existing stair.
I think the path probably needs some work over time, and the stairs.
The stairs look like, they might be on their last leg in the next number of years.
Yeah.
We did contemplate the stair replacement in the 20-year capital plan.
One more question, possibly for staff. I was just curious about this. This one has a note that says closed during shoulder months, and none of the others do. What is that?
Sure. So a couple different things. Yes, so Cherry Street is accessible via the locked gate. I think one of the points that has been made over time is that it becomes potentially more hazardous with the stairs. I mean, if it snows, and how are you going to get down there, and things of that nature. And I know that has been a big consideration, is kind of the public safety aspect of that. And I think that's kind of been the main point to my understanding, is really just the public safety side of things.
I'm going to dovetail. I think Ted wrote email in where he questioned about, when was it a council decision or was it a sort of a administrative decision to put the gate up and the hours and the rules around Cherry? So that would be probably something we should just look at globally.
Okay.
It is a good point, Trustee Orzick. I think one thing is, the different hours where that gate gets unlocked and locked, especially in the morning, between 6 a.m. or whether it's 7:30 a.m. It would be something to consider if we could make it a consistent time. If council would want to explore that, it would make it just simpler. Quite frankly, for our police department, public would know that there's a consistent time that this is either open or not open, things like that. So that is something that we could consider.
That's fine. I find it interesting that there's a gate at all, but.
Okay.
I was thinking that too. I mean, what's the
Okay.
difference if someone wants to, from our point of view, if someone, let's say the gate closes, I'll just say 6 o'clock, someone arrives 15 minutes before or 15 minutes after the time the gate closed, there's not like a significant change in safety issues or anything like that.
Well, are you talking about the hours or the
Or
shoulder
just the-
seasons?
You said why there's a gate at all. I mean, if
I was
someone wants-
talking about the shoulder, why the shoulder season? Why does this one have rules and none of the others do? And then Kirk asked about who made the decision to put a locked gate there. Like, do we want that there?
There is an alternative to just have it open access, just like Spruce Street is right now, just like the ravines are.
Why do we
right,
have a gate
right.
there? Do we?
Yeah.
Fisher has hours,
Yeah.
right?
Fisher.
Correct. All
Fisher
of
does
this,
have hours. I think it's from dusk to dawn. It's not or whatever. There's a sign that says you
Is there
can't
a
access.
gate down there?
No.
No, there's no
a signage.
gate.
So the
Signage.
rules regarding when you can use it.
Okay.
To make the police go down there. To make the police go down there and open and shut gates seems a little ridiculous.
Well, we should look at that idea of whether it's signage, consistent hours of operation, dawn to dusk or whatever, and maybe it's just open access beyond that.
Actually, and on the.
I did put a
board
slide
right
up
now,
that
yeah,
shows the
6
hours, yeah. And there is signage posted at Fisher at the other public access points within the street ends that have hours to this effect.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so for consistency purposes, maybe we need to bring these together, is what we're saying. Okay, something to look at?
Yep.
Comments on Cherry? Public comment, come on up.
Hi there, I'm Vijay Kote. My wife Shiraz and I are here. We live on the south side. I think there's references to the sign that we also have on our property. What I would say is we are very open to collaboration. I'd love to talk to the council and staff about how we can collaborate on these things. I think tonight's meeting was one that we happenstance found out about. I'd love for us to really talk about what are potential solutions and how do we manage not just through signage, because I will tell you there's a lot of signs at Cherry Street Extension, lots of signs, not just my signs, the village signs. No dogs, no swimming, no after hours. Our property's been broken into 3 times off of that access point. We've had people on our property every single day with dogs off leash, with dogs down on the pier swimming. It says no swimming. They're in the water every day. It's hard not to be down there. If you're tempted and the weather's great, teenagers go down and they jump in the water. So what I'm saying is the signs are nice. They don't really change behavior. We do things for to enforce rules, and as you said before, rules are generally not made for the 98% of the people who comply with them. Most of the rules and laws we put in place are for the minority of the 1% to 2% who violate those laws and rules. So as we think about how we want to work together as neighbors, we're very open to those concepts, but we do need to have a balance. A lot of that sign, the verbiage there, is about our liability. People do come onto the property, and President Dearborn, we've spoken about the fact that signs tend to give, to offset the liabilities of the village, right? If there's a sign that says you can't do something and they do it, well, that's on them and that's their liability and their risk. Similarly, we want to make it clear. There is so much access and so many people who trespass on those properties, who are there late, kids who are jumping off those piers, kids who are on the rivets, the grommets on both sides, jumping off, that we're all protected, and signage is not respected today. So again, I come back to say we are very open. We'd love to work with the staff and the council. If there's comments about the sign and we'd like to have a different version of it, happy to talk about it. But the fact of the matter is we want to manage liability, but more importantly, as our neighbors and all of us kind of understand, we want to have a safe environment that not just the public use is more valuable than private, and private is not more valuable than public. We're all neighbors together. So I'll just leave it at that, and we are open to, but we would really appreciate that before any final decisions are made, those directly adjacent to these areas are conversed with ahead of time so that we don't have to do it here, that we can actually coordinate.
Yeah. And Vijay, it would be nice to remove that sign. I just say that we've had a lot of feedback on that particular sign. You've heard it. It would be good just to have a different sign there than that one. I'm just putting that out there. And in terms of signage not working, there's not going to be barriers on the property or anything like that. I know that our police department is down at your property quite frequently. Some of us who grew up in this town, this is all new and different. I don't think the police department was making the kind of frequency of calls down to these lakefront properties as we're seeing today. It is a real challenge for our police department. There's no doubt about that. They do the best they can. They're very responsive. People are people, though, and issues are going to happen down there. We don't want any security issues for you, that's for sure. There's no question, but there's only so much that we can do on that front. So we will have signage. We don't want threatening signage down there at any of these properties. And so we're going to do our best to come up with some, at least village signage, but we would hope you would not have threatening signage either. So just a thought on that. And I know you have a relationship with our police department. Just know that those resources we have, how many officers do we have now, Chief? 15? 16 total, going to 20. They're covering the entire town. To spend as much time as they're spending right now at the lakefront is a shame, and we're trying to figure that out right here.
No, I think that's a great point, and I would also say that I think we found that this isn't just for Winnetka residents. Most of the people who are not following the rules are from far-off areas who know this is a free-for-all area that they can go and do what they want, and they're taking advantage of it to the extent they can. And those adjacent to the Cherry Street specifically, which is so small, that it almost begs people to go off of the 40-foot that's there, and the pier takes a small portion of it. It's a hard place to lie down and sunbathe, so they just keep going.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your thoughts. Thanks for coming tonight. Any other thoughts on Cherry Street?
Sorry.
That's okay. Oh, no, good.
Hi there, Shiraz Cote, 445 resident. I would just like to add one comment that there's a safety issue also for the residents of Winnetka that are not following the signs of no swimming, no diving. If it's not managed like a public beach with a lifeguard, there's just a lot of other issues that there's exposure to with liability, drowning, stuff like that. So, unfortunately, if our only avenue to manage property lines and our liability, it has been to just call the police every single time, perhaps a guard or an attendant, as you've had in the past. That was effective, it seems. You obviously didn't have the police down there as often. So I think that could be a really good or a possible solution for someone to just, for a public safety perspective, to manage who's coming down there, how many people are down there. If there's an emergency situation, who's going to call emergency personnel to respond to like a child drowning. So I would just bring that to your attention too, that it might not be a bad idea to revisit when we're talking about capital allocation, an attendant being there just to demarc, if you don't want ropes or fences, to say, hey, where this sign is and where this sign is, that's public, and anything beyond is private. Of course, if people step on, no big deal, right? But the 98% of what's happening on a daily basis would be managed with just an attendant, frankly. So I would just bring that up, and thank you for holding this session and for listening to our feedback.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Go ahead. Everybody's spoken. Go ahead.
I'm Susan Spall. I live across the other side, the north side of Cherry Street.
Oh, okay.
And the police do come down much more frequently now, which, thank you, we really appreciate that a lot. We've lived there for 19 years now, and it's just a hangout. I mean, kids go down there drinking, smoking, whatever. We pick up broken beer bottles and beer cans and condoms and other things off of our patio from people coming onto our patio in the night partying. They've had giant bonfires. They've taken some of literally their teak beach furniture and burned it. So it's been really scary. And I've tried occasionally during the day to say, can you please go on to the public beach? And I'll have kids swear at me and yell at me, and I'm scared, quite frankly. So just please take all of that into consideration. Cherry Street is not at all like Spruce Street. It's like the polar opposite. It's listed on Google Maps as a public beach. And so everybody from, the far western suburbs of downtown Chicago comes up and uses that beach. It can be very scary sometimes. So.
Okay. Thank you for that perspective. Catherine?
Well, I just wanted to say Spruce Street is like that because we're on Facebook as the secret beach. But the one thing I just wanted to share with you guys is the thought that the more access points you make, the more potential problems you do have with liability and issues. I've pulled kids. Lake Michigan is not, it can be a rough lake, and they see these secret beaches, and I have pulled young kids. They're down there, their mom and dad don't know they're there, so the more of these access points we create as secret beaches, there are problems, in terms of liability, and we just need to think about that, because it can be dangerous.
Okay.
And that might be an argument why we do want to have hours, where we do want to have a gate that is closed, especially during the summertime. I mean, if we are stretching our police thin or not able to deal with issues, is it something where we have to say, yeah, it'd be great if the public could use this all the time, but, there's misuse and there's just too much risk. So I'm not saying, I'm not advocating, but before we make any decisions on have fence or don't have a fence or gate, we should consider that.
Okay. Other.
Hearing from the police chief at some point on how many calls are there, would be interesting.
I could just make one comment. The village did recognize the challenge with having Cherry Street Beach listed on Google Maps as a free public beach. And our communications manager, Josie Clark, worked tirelessly over several months battling with Google, which is a very difficult battle to win. And she was successful in getting it changed in Google and Google Maps. So it's now the Cherry Street Extension. That's Josie Clark's hard work and effort because we had to prove we were the owner, and that in itself was a challenging process. So thank you to Josie, and I appreciate your comments there. The village did work hard to get that corrected.
Okay. Warren?
I would just say that's fantastic, but we're on that list too somewhere, so if you could try for that, it would be great as well.
I'll add that to my list, Mr. Guthrie.
Yeah. So it's Spruce Street Beach?
It's the secret beach.
The secret beach.
Facebook, not on Google Maps.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Winnichenko?
So I wanted to make a couple comments. I'll try to be quick. The sign that we've talked about, there's a real question whether that sign is on private or public land. That sign is underwater. It gets swapped by water sometimes. And as we've talked about, there hasn't been Illinois case law on this since, the 1800s, and maybe that'll change sometime soon. Second, the gated access, and by the way, I just want to make clear, I'm not advocating for people to walk onto anyone's patio or, do stuff on someone's honestly private land. what I'm saying is that it's odd that we treat the lake different than any other backyard or front yard, we talk about it so much. But the sign, the gate being closed, that started somewhere in the 1990s, mid-1990s, according to this lawsuit, which was filed Kayanis versus Finlay, because interestingly, before the gate was there was a question of whether people that lived back in that subdivision had beach access or not. And rather than come to the village and complain about the fact that a gate had been put up blocking their access in winter months, they decided to sue their neighbors to, suggest that there was an easement that the court said wasn't there. But again, it just speaks to this idea of privatizing or limiting access to some and not to others. Again, with the idea of, we talk about no swimming, and I appreciate that there's dangers in anything that we do, but how is it more dangerous to go swimming next to that pier in that 40-foot wide stretch than swimming, 42 feet away on a private beach, if you want to call it that? And once you're in the water, it's no longer private, so you can start there and swim off and, whatever. So, I think these are things that we, kind of need to consider, but ultimately, I think we want to, be careful to balance these things. And there was a third thing I wanted to say.
I think you said two.
What's that?
I think you said two. You had two things.
Three things. There was
No,
the
you said two.
sign,
You said two.
the swing. All right, whatever.
Okay, thank
But
you.
anyway.
Can I say one?
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
As much as we're going to, as I want to speak for the whole council, I would advocate to get these open and give our residents rights to walk the beach. I'm equally or more adamant that they don't come anywhere near your property up and go on your patios. That makes me, I would be equally as upset as you guys are. That's ridiculous. And so I just want you to know we have a line, and it's a pretty hard line.
I mean,
Well, I know.
One of the differences between being in a neighborhood and being on the beach is if, to protect our properties, we have the right to put a fence around it. Well, if you're down on the beach, you can't really fence your beach. So, we are making it harder for homeowners down on the beach to protect their property from people coming from the beach up onto their property. So,
I don't think we're making it harder. It's harder.
it's just harder.
I mean,
Yeah,
we're
it
not
is
doing
harder,
it to make it
but,
harder. Yes.
Inherent in owning beachfront
It is,
property.
it is.
Okay, anything else here before we move on to Willow? Oh, Mr. Root.
John Root, a Winnetka resident. A lot of these issues come down to who owns what. And I think that's something that you need to actually address and come to a determination. I mean, you can have basically the toe of the bluff or ordinary high water mark or the calm water mark as being the demarcations between public property, meaning the state, and private, meaning the village and landowners. So I think you need to sort that out to begin with. And, having a sign that you're trying to regulate, are you going to have it at the ordinary high water mark, back of the bluff, at the calm water? You have to make a decision on that. And I think you need to address it with an ordinance. I think it's a terrible idea to put up a fence or vegetation or whatever to delineate between village property and private property. I mean, how far east do you go? And I don't know on that.
We're not going to put up a fence.
Okay.
There's going to be no fence. Would there be some demarcation, would be some landscaping or something? We haven't decided that, but there will be no fence.
But landscaping, a set of thorn bushes or whatever
There won't
would
be
do
no
the
thorn
same
bushes
thing.
either. There will be no thorn
Okay.
bushes.
Very
So-
good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. It's getting late here, guys. How about Willow Road?
All right. Last one, Willow Road. Again, I think just recapping some of what we have talked about, if we wanted to, we could explore something like a scenic overlook at this location. The one thing I will say is that this one really, the water does really come right up to the to the bluff, if you will. So you probably really wouldn't want to consider adding any stairs or anything like that. Wouldn't really work. It would be unsafe. So that would be something that being the overlook would be something that we could explore if council wanted to.
Well, this one is definitely tied into the East Side Stormwater Project.
Correct.
And there's no question about Willow Road. Thoughts on Willow before we ask for public comment?
I mean, if we're going to try and make this a scenic overlook, we got to figure out as part of that, how do you make it so that it doesn't become enticing for people to go down onto that beach, right? So, I mean, if we can't figure that out, I would not be in favor of doing anything there, really. Yeah.
I would say what Willow has going for it right now, aside from, actually, what Willow has going for it right now is that it does have a sidewalk, and it actually looks all right, whether or not it's functional, on both sides of the road and actually at the end. There's not really a spot to turn a car around, but there is a, whatever, sort of, the curb and gutter is there.
Do you think there's a way to design a barrier that's more attractive than a fence at the end of Willow Road?
Yes.
I mean, should we be looking at that? I mean, right now, it's a very utilitarian street end, very unattractive. with a
Correct, and
fence.
it's like, I mean, as Hannah brought up in the pictures, right, this would be a situation just like the plant where I would have concerns about allowing access to the water's edge because of the utility and the functionality of what's going on out there, right? There's obvious potential safety issues because of the interaction with stormwater or whatever, you know, the UP has their outfall there. But yeah, a chain link fence that's locked is not in the spirit of what we're going after.
Correct. Hannah, can we put that on the list as something to look at?
Absolutely. And to your point, I think this one, the view from the lake, you really can see that height difference between the water and the top of the bluff there. So yeah, definitely making sure that, again, if when we're looking at the east side stormwater, you know, an overlook is something that would be proposed as well as part of that, or could be proposed as part of that, obviously safety precautions would be taken into consideration.
Okay,
Pretty low on my priority list.
low on the priority list, okay. Any public comment on Willow Road? Warren?
I hope you all paid attention to the separate correspondence I sent on the beach ends, Willow Road in particular. Please note that these improvements at Willow were completed recently, 2021. They were to address erosion, and they improved the road, the sidewalk, and installed a chain link fence, a 6-foot-tall chain link fence on public property. Why? Safety. That was the stated reason. At the very same time that the village was undertaking these improvements, the Park District was proposing a fence at the north end of Elder stating access, public safety. And there is a balance. I think we need to recognize there's a balance between public access and public safety, and each instance needs to be looked at carefully. Willow's 510 feet away from the north end of Elder. That's it. There's a convergence there. 510 feet, 3 minutes walk. But it's impassable. It's impassable because of the stone revetment that was installed in 2020 in the south and 2021 at the end of Willow. Had the village been more thinking about designing something more aesthetically appropriate, you could have done an overlook at that time, but monies were expended to create this less desirable outcome. So I'd urge you, consistency, strike the right balance between privacy and safety. Each situation is different, but you got to apply the same principles.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Winnichenko?
Yeah, thank you. Also, the other thing about that fence is it's set so far back from the lake shore. I mean, it could be moved well forward and still provide some sort of safety. And remember, Willow's a full-length street. It is easy to park on both sides of the street. Cars park there all the time. I don't think they get ticketed very often because the people that park there are the ones that live there. But I'm sure that if you don't live there and someone saw your car, they would call the police. And I wanted to say, as a general rule, as others have said, you know, there is a balance between allowing people to get there and providing, but you can't legislate stupid. And unfortunately, before we get to about 23 or 24 years of age, there's a lot of stupid. And the real question is like, how much of an authoritarian regime do we want to be? I mean, there have been all sorts of horrific injuries. Just a couple of years ago, there was a young man that was horrifically injured. I mean, but the point is that should we limit everyone's ability to have this natural resources for, this extra tiny bit of safety and control? And I would argue that we really shouldn't. I mean, going back to Willow, maybe, and I could, maybe some sort of decorative concrete wall that, encased at the end that would make it difficult unless you really were trying to get over it and get down to the lake. But in general, I think that we need to be more open to public access.
Okay. Kim?
Kim Marsh. Grew up on Elder Lane and spent almost every day of the summer from 1972 to 1977 down at the end of Willow, sitting on the pier there. It's a beautiful spot, and I think it would be a perfect opportunity to have an overlook. You mentioned the Glencoe South Street overlook. I don't think, if you got creative, you could figure something out safety-wise, and it would be a very, very beautiful solution to what now is, and for years has been, a chain link fence with, I believe, had a screen for a long time, and just a bunch of boulders and a screen and overgrown bushes. And that's a beautiful street end that could be made into somewhere, even with a picnic table. So my dad was in a wheelchair. We could go down there and sit at the picnic table and look at the lake. To me, the safety issue, there were 2 deaths at Elder Lane 3 years ago. And, you can't, like Ted said, you can't legislate against teenagers doing things in the middle of the night that are insane. So that's my comment about Willow.
Good points. Thank you for that. Other comments on Willow Road before we start to adjourn here? Any public comment generally that anyone would like to make before we move on from this topic? I think, and tell me what the group thinks here, I sort of feel that staff can put together a summary memo of this meeting, outline some of the issues that we need to be looking at, outline some of the comments that neighbors made, make that public so that everyone knows where we stand and where we're going on this, because there have been a lot of really good comments that have been made, and we've got some work to do. And as Trustee Meyer said, we have there are budget considerations, and so we're going to do what we can do here. But I think that the public access part of this is really, really very top of mind to this group. So
Lay out the path for everything, including Willow. I mean, if there's an overlook, we all lay out the path, what could happen.
Does that make sense, Hannah?
That makes perfect sense. We appreciate it. It was a lot of really good discussion. This is helpful, so.
Thank you for an excellent presentation. Any other comments before we start to adjourn this meeting? All right.
I was just going to say thank you to the lake owners for coming and telling us your perspectives and all of that. I think when we're all working together, we can come to the best solutions for everybody.
Mrs. Root, you want to come up and make your comment?
I came tonight, Colleen Root, 326 Woodland, and I came tonight to thank you because this has been quite a path for recognizing public access, public trust, the right of the community to walk the high water mark. When we moved here, goodness, it's been 8 years, there was not a recognition of that. And so you have worked so hard and you've done so much. First of all, the amazing 2040 plan, the vision there, where you emphasized how important for health and mental well-being this sort of access was to public open land. Then all the work you did on the lakefront protection ordinances. Thank you. They matter. They matter a great deal. And tonight, this was so refreshing to sit here and listen to you as you embraced the understanding that our public street, lakefront street endings, are corridors to Lake Michigan to let us walk and enjoy the high water mark. I also respect public property rights, and I think that the majority of Winnetkins are going to appreciate that and honor that. So again, sincere thanks to you for all your work and all your effort. You're an amazing council, and you really, you kind of reflect the historic plan of what Winnetka was. That you know, to have a vision that Bennett did, to have an open lakefront that the community could enjoy. So kudos to you. You should be proud of yourself.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Appreciate it, Colleen.
Any other comments before I go into my final spiel here? All right. Closed session. I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussing the sale or lease and related price for village property and probable imminent and pending litigation pursuant to Sections 2C6 and 2C11 of the Open Meetings Act, respectively. Under the motion, when we adjourn the closed session, this public meeting will automatically and immediately adjourn without the conduct of any further business or comments. May I have that motion?
So moved. Second.
And Kristen, that's a roll call vote.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Orsic?
Yes.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate it.